Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Rocket Lasso Live. This is episode 15. It's another Wednesday, and we're starting a little bit late on this one because we just did like an hour and 15 minutes of just like Q&A that wasn't even specific about Cinema 4D. So now we're beginning the official Cinema 4D portion of this. So thank you so much for coming and hanging out and watching. We got lots of people in the chat. Man, there's tons of questions coming in all over the place. We got people on YouTube, people on Twitch. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming and hanging out. And I will start clicking these questions, except I just want to spend a second and mention that we do have a Rocket Lasso Slack channel. I forgot to mention it last week. So you head over to rocketlassoslack.com and then sign up and come and continue the conversation with all these fun people that ask and answer questions and do challenges. So yeah, come and hang out. It should be really good. And if you're watching this very soon after it comes out, then next Wednesday, April 22nd, I'm going to be doing a presentation on C4D live at the regular time for the live stream. So yeah, that's really cool. With that out of the way, why don't we start looking at some links? So AB had a question about rigging. I do want to get to that, and we will. Just some basic IK rigging and then Autowieghting, because I think we do something like that quickly. But let's click a visual link to start out with. So I'm going to scroll around, click randomly. Well, Mick got in real quick with a question, so I'm going to click that one. Let's see what we got. Good, the audio is muted. Let's pull it over here. So this is Bubbles from somebody who's Russian. I don't even know Russian characters, so I'll just say map. So, it auto-played. Go back. Okay, so they just said in the chat. Wait, I got the chat here. Bloop. Chat, Mick specifically just said, how'd you go about creating this effect? So pretty straightforward. Let's see. I mean, it's neat looking, but isn't this? Well, they appear to be particles, but I don't see any reason we couldn't do this with MoGraph. So here we are in Cinema 4D. R21, and let's see if we can get something kind of like this. And what's really cool, one of the things with R20 and R21 is that you can build rigs that behave like particle systems, but now we have very direct control over the way they work. Now, I mean, the effect is pretty specific. I don't want to just completely bite their style, so we'll work from a cube, which is at least a little different, but just kind of like this expanding, exploding, floaty vibe to it. So we'll round this out a little bit, make it a little more stylized. Put it into a cloner. I mean, it's pretty big to start out. I wonder if I should shrink it. And I'm going to hit T for scale and scale it. Hey, where's my number? There it is. So let's go down to 25% of the original. We got our cloner, and we can make as many clones as we like. We can, yeah, why don't we... If you, something I typically do is if I just want a bunch of clones starting at one spot, especially if we're going to treat this like an emitter. Actually, it might be kind of cool if we do treat this like an emitter. I wonder how well that'll work. Let's see. If we make it so that there is no offset, so our position, I'm going to get rid of this Y value. Now it's making a bunch of clones in the exact same spot. Now, we could make these dynamic, although in the reference we were viewing, I don't think that they were dynamic. So a lot of it just goes to they are starting to float their way out. Now, I'm trying to think. I mean, there's so many different ways we could do this, but I'm trying to think. Let's make it a little more interactive, a little bit more. Not literally dynamic, but like dynamic in our approach. Because the straightforward thing would be like, okay, we'll make a random effector, and then we'll start animating this upward. But that's a little straightforward. Let's make it fancier. So one thought is, yes, we've got the random. Yes, let's get some rotation going in there. 90, 90, 90. So it's not too much. And let's see if that transition is good. Okay, there's a decent amount of rotation, probably too much. So I'll actually increase the movement so that ratio is less. So the thought here is if we use our fall off, if we use fields, then we should maybe be able to start increasing the power of this as we go. So we want the power to increase automatically. Now, one thought would be if we put a I'm intentionally making this more difficult on myself, but let's see if we can make this work. So under the, let's add a MoGraph tag. I'm going to specifically add a MoGraph weight map. So you see all of these have they all have a little dot on them. So it's like how much power is in there. And we could paint on them and have them spread out. But my thought is when they're created, when they're born, they're going to start out at 0. So if we turn on fields inside of this weight map, we can, at the moment of them being created, they're at 0. But if we, what's the best way to do this? I guess I'd need to intersect with something right away. So if I make a spherical field and it's right here in the center, and I'm going to set down 10, be pretty small. And I'm going to give it an inner, it could probably be infinitely small, but let's put it there. So when these hit the spherical field, they're going to get 100% weight. So I don't actually want them to get 100% weight. So we'll probably pull the strength down. Yeah, let's do that. I'm going to pull the strength down to 10%. So here's a thought. If we go into the random and drag in the weight map, everything goes away because it's got no weight whatsoever. These are not applied. And I think nearest is what we want. Now, if I hit play, okay, nothing's happening right away. Let's see. Let me think. That's going to apply. So size 10, 10% weight map. That should all work. But no, it did. Okay, I was like, I should see something. As soon as I clicked, it did refresh. So we got to be careful with that. But they did move. So the next step is I want to create a freeze. So we're going to add a modifier layer. It's freeze. Set that to add. So it's always adding to what it sees below. And what this is going to do is, well, yeah, I'm going to say grow. Well, is grow the right one? How would we make it constantly additive, but from its base location? That might be a little trickier than I thought it was. Like I said, we're intentionally making this more complicated. There's simple ways of doing this. We're intentionally making it a little bit fancier, so maybe we can learn some new things. So grow is going to grow. Okay, well, I'm sort of, you see that they grew and they all grew very quickly. But my question is, I don't know if this, how do we test this? I want it to grow. I want it to keep on growing, but that it can grow just itself, if that makes sense. So if I were to make the radius really small, yeah, even guys say it to 1 should probably do the test. Yeah, okay, that does work. You see how they're all moving out constantly. And I think it's because, well, here's a hope in it. It is working so far, is every single one of these being born inside of the spherical field, which means it's being born with 10% of the effect applied. So with 10% of the effect applied, the freeze now sees it and it says, okay, I'm going to increase your effect strength by, in this case, saying 100%. Now that's a lot. I'm going to drop this down to 10 and let's see if they move slower. Yes. Okay. It's working well. Now, if I'm going to set this radius really tiny, like 0.01, because if this is working, that should still work. Yeah, it does. Okay, excellent. So they essentially can infect themselves. So now they're being born, they're getting an initial value, and then they're self-growing. So now the idea is if we start, I guess, does a freeze clamp? I'm going to unclamp, and I wonder if it keeps on going beyond that. It probably won't. Yeah, it still clamps at 100%, unless there's a setting for that. No. Remapping. I wonder if I can say unclamp and if that would work. Aw, too bad. Okay, so we're clamped. It can't go above a certain value. It can't go above 100. So we just have to keep, all of our values will be within this 100. So just good to know. Now, that's fine because we can drop our effect strength down to something like 1%. And now you're going to see it's going to grow very slowly, which is kind of what we're going for here. And we have very direct control over that. And we could add modifications on top of it. So I'm going to move out to 2% just so it's a little bit quicker. But the next step of this, and where I think it can get interesting, and I'm going to save our scene file before we go too far. And this would probably be a good moment to mention that if you are supporting on Patreon at a certain level, then you get access to all of these scene files after the episode. I almost always post on Friday. So what are we doing? I don't even know. Let's just call it a cloner emitter rig. Do. Oop. Do. There we go. Okay, so here's my thought. Let's see if this works. we have a count. If we drop the count down, I guess we can start at 1. And this would be a great use for signal, but I'm going to try and do this with no plugins. If we have 1, you see it's going to do the effect and then slowly move away. And in fact, it's getting hit by 10% right in the beginning. So we could make the initial spherical only apply... where is it? Remapping. I'm going to have it apply only 1%. And then honestly, the size of this should be pretty tiny. Wait, size 1. If you click too quick, it sometimes doesn't acknowledge. Okay, still working. Seemingly still working. Although you can never trust this freeze. I'm going to hit clear. Yeah, let's hit clear and make sure that. Okay, it is going. You see it is moving. All right, so this is slowly getting the weight applied and it moves out. Let's have the random go way further than it does. So I'm going to have this rotate up to 360. 360, 360, and let's go all the way out to 1000, 1000, 1000. So that should be quite a bit. So let's see how well we can make this sort of behave like an emitter, but an emitter that is a rig. To unclamp, you can use a formula field just with T in it. Yes. Basil, that's a good point, but you'll see where that will not work with my next step. And that is going to be, can we create more particles, or in this case, count as we go? So I'm going to keyframe that, and let's fast forward 100 frames, 111, because it's quicker to type. And at this time, let's have created 222 of these. And now my hope is, as each one gets created, it's created, well, let's see, oh, no, something's not, it's not maybe working too well. Why is it, oh, maybe it doesn't like the refreshing of the count. This entire rig was going to be built off this idea. So if this doesn't, if this count, animating the count doesn't work, then maybe Basil's idea would work. But I was hoping that we could create new ones, and the new ones would be created, and then they'd suddenly get the weight in the center, and then they'd slowly start drifting out. If you use a formula factor with T, they'd all be at the same absolute time all the time, and you wouldn't be able to get that offset as they're born. But yeah, that's not it's not working so great. So let me think if there's any ways around that. Once again, I'm overcomplicating it intentionally, but that's maybe not a good idea. So here's a unrelated thought. What if we crank the strength up to 100? So there's suddenly, they still need to get created, but they're not, it's like they're not existing at all until the keyframe stops. That's not good. Just out of curiosity, I am going to use Signal. This is a plugin that I made at Grayscale Gorilla. I just want to see if it causes a different type of refresh. I'm not going to keep this, but let's just see. Linear, go up to 111, over 90 frames. Yeah, same problem. So it's like the cloner can't refresh properly if it is animated in that way, if the count is being animated. So that's unfortunate. Now there are several other approaches. Basil is correct that we could do things like we could just create an emitter and emit them getting created that way, but those wouldn't have I am actually curious. I am going to create an emitter just as a way of creating these as a count. So instead of keyframing this count, let's clone onto an object, and the object will be a emitter, and emitter will emit 1, 1, 0 speed. I don't want to move. And then a size of 0, 0. So essentially, it's just a single particle getting created. It's going to keep creating particle, 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 particle. So with that in mind, we're going to say that it should be cloning onto the emitter. So it should create particles. Okay, well, you see, yeah, they're going to be created very slowly. But you see that they are popping into existence, but they're popping into existence. Wait, I cranked this up to 100, so let's drop that back down. No, they have the same power at the end. They're getting everything applied. So, oh man, it's so close to working. It's like they're, when they're born, it's like they're taking on the weight map of the other ones, or maybe the freeze can't store the information the freeze can't store the information from one. When another one gets created, it like copies the instance of the information. Maybe there's a lot of different like code reasons why this might happen, but you can see my hope here was that each one would be created and then independently would be hit by a little dot of that, and they'd slowly start fading up. So each one could go through their own process of getting 100% applied. And that is sadly not working. Now we could, as Basil said, we could create a formula using time. We could create just a time node, which is actually this exact same thing. The problem goes into that they're all going to get applied all the time. I'm going to temporarily turn out the freeze node and everything. So now it's just time getting applied to them. And I guess it goes back to, we just need them all to exist in the beginning. If they're all just hanging out 0, 0, 0, then that's possibly fine. So let's just say that there's 100 of them right in the start. If we hit play, you're going to see that time is saying to just constantly grow and expand them outward. That's fine. Now, inside of, and this weight map's not, I guess it is the weight map doing this, but I think we can skip the weight map entirely. So instead of using the weight map, I'm going to get rid of that inside of here, and we'll just use the time node inside of the random directly. So this tag is not doing anything. I guess we saved, we'll delete those. So this should look visually the same. So time is expanding. The only difference being is I think we could unclamp this and they will keep going forever. Yeah, so those will go forever now, but you see they're all moving at exactly the same time. Now, there are some possibilities because we've got this offset parameter, and the offset we can feed other variables. So if we were to feed in something like a step, which I think is in here, maybe it's under here, step, we can add in step. This is actually taking the index of each object and feeding it through. So I think... oh, okay. It's offsetting them forward in time. So I actually want to do 1 minus that, which is going to be, or is it even 1 minus that? We have to do the offset remapping. This is going to be a little bit weird. Yeah, this will do it. So we actually have to map this backwards. So I'm going to say I want to go from -100 up to 100. I think that maybe will work. Sorta. They're all still interesting. That's very interesting. It's not stepping the way I would think it would step. I'm sure I'm doing something silly here. I just want each of them to offset using time. Very strange. But playing with this min max, I don't kind of trust that. So I'm going to make a solid, and the solid is a time offset as well. And if I were to take a solid, and I don't think I have to group these, but I'm going to group them. If I have a solid, then this is now a value. I could set that down to, say, 1, and then subtract a step from it. And will that... Well, I mean, that does work in the fact that they're all exploding outward, but I don't think the step is actually what's doing that. You see that I was able to offset the time with a solid by putting a value of 0. Then, oh wait, I think it says if I didn't do anything. Yeah, sorry, I'm making up nonsense right now. So they're all exploding out. So it's a step effector that's causing us trouble. Subtract. I mean, does it not accept negative values? It has to accept negative values. It doesn't seem to. Not from a solid anyway. If I delete that, we just have the offset as its own standalone parameter. We could subtract that. I can keyframe, move this back. They actually start negative. Hey Ninja, we're just making stuff. I was kind of trying to make it an emitter. We're actually trying to make something incredibly simple, but I'm intentionally overcomplicating it. But now my overcomplicated ways are not working. So I wonder if we should just go to I was trying to make a keyframeless emitter concept. And there's a lot of approaches, and I got to say, it's just not immediately coming to me. Now, we are also doing this time offset. Now, actually, I'm I am going to try the formula method just because I'm kind of intrigued, because here's the formula, and the formula we got all these variables, and I want to give credit to Basil because he's the one who originally suggested it, but we have something, we have T and we also have D. But you type in T, it's just time, and it's going to behave exactly like the time we just had. So they should all get that amount applied. But we have the ID as well. So if we take T minus ID, then we might be able to start getting some weird effects. Yeah. So what's happening now is every single one of them is one full unit further back in time. Now that's way too big of an amount. So if we take T minus ID, but I'm going to divide the ID by some value. So let's say divided by 100 and close that. So we're dividing the count by this. Now these all numbers are going to go negative, but you see those will go negative, and then they're all going to offset it to go out. Now if we were to clamp that value somehow, and we can do that really easily here, we can grab a clamp. And I'm going to say I want to clamp the minimum, but I'm not worried about the max. So now this is saying, hey, you can't go negative. So now they're all going to be at 0, but time is slowly coming out. And you see how they're all offset in time now? I'm not sure what I was doing wrong with the step effector for that not to work, but you can see how those are all now getting offset in time. So they're all sort of emitting outward. And the more that we offset this ID, then the more that those will spread out from each other. So along those lines, we could, I'm dividing it by 10, or by 100. And if I divided it by, let's just say 10, they're all going to spread out slower. You see that it's a bigger proportion. A bunch of them are way negative, but they can't say negative. They have to say 0. So now you see each one is coming out. So that's something. I tend not to use a formula too much. So I do like this as a method, because just feeding time and the ID is incredibly straightforward. So this these all emitting out like that. That's fine. And it's the overall value is unclamped. So these will fly out forever. So, that is also neat. And, we have a lot of power in other places as well. If we were to, I guess it's constantly, trying to think of if we want to terminate those so they don't keep moving out forever. We can put in subfields. So T minus subfields. I wonder if that would be a thing. If we could, I don't know. We don't play with formula too much, so I'm kind of intrigued by it. If I were to create a spherical field and give it a nice big fall off, T for scale, and scale it way up, I wonder if we could feed in. I'm going to copy that, and we're just going to say T minus subfields. I think we have to type in whole word. So there's now this spherical field, and I'm curious if these will slow down as they, oh no, they're kind of, maybe it's 1 minus fields, or maybe we have to invert this. I'm going to say invert. I mean, it seems to have an effect, but it's not exactly what I thought it would. It gets a little bit weird. We could multiply, but see, even multiplying wouldn't necessarily work great. We could clamp the value. See, a simple, what you would think would be a simple way, but I just don't think will work, is you could just put the spherical field on top and say multiply, and now that would slow them down. But they're the formula is going to push it way beyond 1. So then it's multiplying 1 to a smaller value, but eventually it's going to push beyond that, and we're not even going to see the visual difference. So that wouldn't work. Yeah, there'd be something there. I mean, I like this basic emission. I would love for them to be able to slow down. That's what I'm kind of trying to think of right now. It would be T minus that, but a lot of it just goes to and we could start decreasing T, but I think that rewinds. I mean, T is an absolute value, right? So if I were to, if these all are emitting and then suddenly time equals 0, yeah, they keep on moving. Actually, it's a little bit weird. That's weird. Yeah, we're feeding it time, but right now I'm saying time equals 0. Unless that is, a delta time. Maybe this slider is a slider-based one. Oh, yeah, okay, so it's a slider-based one. So here's my question. Is this additive? Oh, it is additive. Oh, okay, look at that. So this is this. If we feed in D, then it's essentially time multiplied by this, but it's an additive function. So that's pretty cool. So we could keyframe that where those would fade out. So good to know. But I have a function in my head that is way too mathematically complicated. I don't think we could make it work. It would be too much guess and checking. It's the kind of thing I would like to do in my free time. But if we had like t divided by t kind of thing, so it's like you can start getting like it would decrease itself eventually, but yeah, t minus plus t, yeah, divided by t. I don't know. It gets weird. It gets weird. That one seems to go faster. Well, yeah, we'd be guessing and checking. Well, that's all fine. Man, I do want to explore this some more. Maybe it's something for us to do in the bonus stream tomorrow, is exploring this type of thing. Because it's pretty neat. I think it could be the fundamentals of something more interesting. But let's go. I hate hitting a little dead end like that. But let's kind of go back to the original question and just make it in the more straightforward way instead of trying to do the fancy way. So once again, let's go back to the original question. Refresh for anybody who's wondering. We got this nice bubbling. Blah, 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 blah. So very much like a particle type of thing. And pause. It goes so quick. Stop it, YouTube. There. So yeah, I think that these are all just kind of growing out. So I don't see any reason why we can't use multi-instances, and that we can make there be 1,000 of these. And we will just do some straightforward keyframing. Now, we could just do this with an emitter, but we will just do it with MoGraph, so it gives us more direct control. So rotation, 90, 90, 90. Movement, 100, 100, 100. And we can keyframe out the strength. Neat. So I think we will just keyframe that out. But we want this to be a little bit more uneven. So I'm going to feed in the fall off. I'm going to feed it a random field. And I think we could just feed this one a random. So each one's getting its own random unique value. So as I were to increase the strength here, yeah, you see a lot are getting left behind and some are moving more forward. It's going to make it a little bit more spherical. It's going to be a little bit cube-like. The random is moving everything out in its own orientation. So that's slightly different, but we can keyframe this. So at the time of 0, keyframe the strength. And I don't know how long it should be. About 400. How big should it get at 400? That's just fine. All right, so if that's going out to 400, we're going to see that this will transition nicely. It's going to have a little bit of a curve to it, but I think I'm fine with that. So those are moving out, but we need to start getting those big ballooning effects. So this one will be the explode. As soon as you have more than one effector of the same type, I tend to like naming them because it's really easy to get them mixed up. So this one will be scale. I don't think I applied it. Yeah, let me apply it after the fact. So this random scale, what is it going to do? Well, it's going to randomize the scale for 1. Let's do a uniform scale, absolute scale, and it's going to scale them up. It's going to scale them up quite a bit, like that. What I'm thinking is we allow, oh, look cool in the beginning. I'm thinking we allow this to pass through a big cloud of random noise. So I'm going to randomize the field. Yeah, it's actually already kind of happening. You see, these are, the reason these are vibrating is they're passing through a cloud of noise. So if we start increasing the cloud, they'll pass through the cloud slower and their transitions should be smoother. So we're going to get all this motion, all this like secondary animation, but it's just because these are passing through a cloud of noise that's telling them to scale up. Now, I think what we should do is scale down our original cube a lot. So we get T for scale them way down. And the reason we're going to scale that down to another 25% of its original is because now we can tell the scale to scale up even more. So when they do scale up, I want it to be pretty significant. And let's see what that does by itself. I mean, I like this kind of puffy, stylized cloud type of look. I mean, these are pulsing really nicely as we pass through the cloud. There's a lot of different ways we could do it. We just be straight up animating through them. But that's passing through. They're scaling up and down very nicely. We can influence the scale, how they're remapped here. If we go to our remapping in the random field, twirl it down and change this to a curve. And now we could say that they should be, in general, be a lot smaller, and only very occasionally will they get to be the bigger ones. And I think they'll stand out more. And we could probably make them bigger overall because so much more rarely do they get large. So here they get large, you know, there's enough of them. But as it gets bigger, a lot of them are tiny and only occasionally do they get bigger. And I think it's just a lot of them are going to be like the way they pass through each other is what is going to create the effect. Now, I wonder if there's kind of stylistically, well, and along these lines, we could also tell this to do color as well. So I'm going to say this will be, I guess, the field color. I'm going to use the field's color. And in here, if I turn on color, then we can go to the color remapping and colorize this however we want to. So let's have these be kind of a sucker for teal. Let's go teal and orange. Why not? More in the bluish realm of teal. And then when they get nice and big, let's go nice darkish orange. Let's see how that goes. Oh, that's interesting. It's not applied right away, so they start out white. I'm not too worried about that, but you can see how we're controlling the color here. As they get bigger, they should turn green. And as the randoms is partially getting applied, they're turning orange. We'd have to set their base color via probably the initial cloner would be a thing. So yeah, that's how they're going to start out orange. And then this random shouldn't be a gradient. It should just be a color. And then that color will straight up be teal. Ooh, never mind. Oh, look at that. Oh, look at that blue. It's gorgeous. So yeah, now that'll do a full transition of the full range of colors here. So those will transition into those. Now, a thought that pops into my head would be that stylistically might look cool. And I think it's sort of an effect that we're seeing in the animation is, what if we layered up, I'm trying to think of a way of layering up several of them. MoGraph, square, I don't even know what to call it. Square bubbles. I'm trying to think of a way that we could make several clones that all exist in the exact same spot. And then, so it's like this cube could exist several times in the same spot and they get slightly different rotations and maybe slightly different, scales so they could pass through each other. We can do it. And we already tried doing the fancy method. It didn't really work. A thought is, the basic way would just be copy the cloner and modify one of them slightly more than the other one. If we were going to do it, how can we layer them up on top of each other? The only thing that's making them move right now is this random. And this random is automatically giving every single one of them their own movement. Now, how could we even make several cubes in one spot, tell you the truth? Actually, I have an idea. I don't know if this will work, but let's put a cloner in a cloner. I'm going to make a copy of the cloner. And here's another, I'm going to go effectors, delete, cloner. This is making a bunch of clones. Now, the instancing could break things, so we have to keep that in mind. But let's put 5 cubes inside of this one. Actually, let's go real light. We'll start with 3. I'm going to put the cloner in the cloner. So now there's a cloner in the cloner, and then maybe there's several copies of this. But it is a multi-instance, so let's keep that in mind. It could stop things from working. So now I'm going to select the inner cloner, and let's try adding a random factor on there and see if other ones will pop out. They didn't, so I'm thinking it's the multi. So just for safety, I'm going to drop this down to 111 and drop this to instance. And we got this random effector. What do we got? What do we got? Oh, that's also multi-instance. Let's set that to instance as well. So this one is being affected just by that. Okay, okay, no, there it is. You see that we do get like 3 of them separating out, so that's fine there. Now, how far can we push it? If I set this to multi-instance, does it break? Yes. Undo. If I set this to multi-instance, does it break? Well, it's still there, but they might all be copies of each other, like identical copies. So we're going to have to push it further and see if that is the case. So we've got this random, and I want to keep it so this value doesn't go too far out. We can just push it a little bit, and then let's also add in a little bit of rotation, not too much, 33, 33, 33. Well, that's not that much. Oh, I guess we're still at a very small fraction. I'm going to crank that to 100 and control it directly through here. So these will only separate by 11, 11, 11. Even that's too much. Maybe. 5, 5, 5. Okay, now you can see the rotations actually coming through. Now, it's really hard to see if they're identical. I'm thinking that they're identical. What I'm doing is I'm increasing one value a lot, and you see how we get this one single floater pulling away from every single one of them. That is indicating to me that it is not, the system isn't feeding through. But if we were to put this in a regular instance, and let's see, are these identical still? Actually, they do kind of still seem to be. Yeah, it's all, the groups of 3 are splitting off into groups of 2 and 1, so they still feel like they're identical. I thought a cloner and a cloner would acknowledge the differences. I thought. Now we could try feeding that to a noise. Indexed. I think these are different now. Okay, they're in an indexed noise, so those are different. You can see where these 3 are still touching, but these are floated away a lot. And these are, those are broken apart. These are way apart, so they're all different inside there because now it's based off of a index global noise. But now I'd really love if these could be multi-instance, but I doubt it. Yeah, as soon as we turn it back to multi-instance, that's the trick with multi-instance. It's all about like, you can't really make fundamental changes to them. So you have to leave that on regular instance. Too bad. Having said that, this might not be too slow. Let's find out. Whoa, that got funky. Oh, I guess that makes sense. I still have a very large value here. There we go. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. They do look as neat as I was hoping they would, where they're all kind of wiggling inside. Now, okay, it was the orange was being fed into an orange, which was like obliterating the color. So now we're back to our original color, and now we've got these little individual wiggly guys, each wiggling, doing their thing. So stylistically, I'm gonna name this one inner clones. Stylistically, we can have this do whatever we want. So those are slightly rotating, they're slightly moving. We could just do a little bit of rotation, maybe some scale. Let's do some absolute but non-uniform scaling. Actually, it could be even weird with oh, that's weird too. Yeah, just different little combinations here. I think you can get some neat stylistic funkiness going on. But yeah, them all hanging out on each other. I don't know, it just makes for a unique look. I like it. I mean, is it identical to what we were looking at? No. I mean, we weren't trying to make it identical. There's a lot more particles. It goes by so quick. Yeah, Yeah, these are, I mean, they're just expanding really quick and a bunch get left over. It seems like they, I mean, it seems like what those are doing is they're scaling up really big, really quickly, and then shrinking back down again. But it's probably more of a particle system. So I was trying to make something a little bit different. Bloop, 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 bloop. I don't know. It's cute. I'm going to save it. We'll wrap that one up there. A little MoGraph exploration. I don't mind doing that every once in a while. I like these colors. I'm going to have to keep this dark blue in mind. I just love the way it looks. We're going to go a little extra later today because we spent an hour talking. Let's see. I saw an interesting question here. Pete is asking, any idea how to create a wet map that's not using X particles? Tell you the truth, I'm not 100% sure of like what the definition of a wet map is, but if I'm following your request, we should be able to do it pretty easy with some of the new MoGraph tools here. So you would need a vertex map probably to capture it. So you'll need one vertex map that's heavily subdivided. So let's see, what's the best way to do this? Yeah, this will be our wheel. We'll make it tinier. We'll make it taller. Scoot it off this way. Let's just make a dark material for it. Boom. And we'll even round it. Why not? Nice. This will be, I'm going to make a floor. I'm going to visually hide the floor from rendering. So this will be our tire. And it will be dynamic. It is a rigid body, and we'll copy that to the floor. So, copy that to the floor. And now that wheel should follow the ground, and it's going to stay static. But if we fling it forward, tire. Let's check out the subject. It's going to be hard to see here. Here's what I should have done. We'll do this just for clarity. In the color channel, we will feed the old checkerboard. Surfaces, checkerboard. Two by two. There we go. That's a nice looking tire if ever I saw one. So we can set a custom initial velocity. Obviously, this will be a tire on a car or whatever you want it to be. This is just what it happens to be here. We don't need any information that's not helping us. So I'm going to kill off these height segments. Those aren't helping us. And under the custom initial velocity, oh, that's custom center. Whoops. Collision, dynamics, custom initial velocity. We're going to travel in X plus. We got X, Y, Z. X, let's say 444. And let's see what that gives us. Boom, it flings it forward, and it's going to start rolling just from the friction. So it's working just fine. Yeah, it's almost exactly what I want. We'll go a little bit faster, and maybe I'm going to try giving it a little bit of wonky rotation. Yeah, I want to make it a little bit more imperfect. I'm not sure how far I can push that before it breaks. There we go. That's more fun. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Okay. So now we've got a slightly irregular path. Whoa, whoa, whoa. I like it. So let's save it. And now we can say, let's save it as number 2. All right, now we've got our plane. This is just going to serve as capturing our wet map. So I'm going to subdivide it pretty heavily, and honestly, even that's not that heavily, depending on the resolution you're going for. So I'm going to do 222 by 222. So you see we got quite a few. Now you notice I didn't make that the dynamic object. The floor is the dynamic object because this is just going to capture our wet map. So pretty straightforward, I think, from here. Let's rename it wet map because why not? Wet map. And make it editable. Go to point mode. Create a vertex weight, set it all to 0. And now this will be looking at fields, and we will want to freeze. We'll make a new one when we need it. Now we could feed it this mesh directly. That's fine. You could do it that way. it's going to take longer to calculate, significantly longer. So I don't see any reason not to create a cylinder. So I'm going to make a cylindrical field, aim it on Z+, make it a child of the tire, reset PSR, and let's just visually make this match the scale. We could even expand it a little bit just to make sure that it's capturing. I'm not terribly worried about it missing, but let's just leave it a little bit bigger. And I'm going to give it no fall off. And that should, with any luck, it'll move with it. And you can see here that it's turning yellow anywhere that is nearby. So that is cool. Now, all we need this to do is in the vertex map, we can feed in some modifiers. The main one here being a decay. We turn on the decay and crank it up all the way to max, hit play. Then now anywhere that hits is going to, it's going to remember the way the vertex map looked at its brightest point and just stay there forever. So that's working quite nicely by itself. The decay, of course, can be set to a smaller percentage. So we go down to 90. So now it's losing 10% of its strength every refresh. So it's going to take a little bit. It's a big number, 90. We can see how it's fading away. So we actually get this drifting trail, which is actually quite nice as well. In addition to that, I mean, it just goes to, it's like a wet map. So, and I don't know if I'm using the correct definition of wet map, but that should automatically work really well. You can feed that into whatever you want. And just to throw it out there, like if you were making material, you don't just have to feed the material in via this. The vertex map can translate via fields to most anything. Now, let's push it a little bit further just for fun. I wonder, so I don't think of that, actually, I can't think of that working. I was trying to think of like, what would there be a way, there's two different effects I want to do. One would be, let's smooth it out, like blur it a little bit, make it look a little bit smoother, because this is going to be pretty janky, especially up close, but we can make that look better. The other would be, is there a way of making this kind of spread out, but also fade? Because if, yeah, I can think of a way of doing it. It might not be the most elegant way, but I think it would work. There's got to be a better way, though. Because if it grows, how can it grow and fade at the same time? Well, in any case, let's do the making it look smoother effect. So the way I like doing this is creating a second vertex map, delete everything, and we'll drag the first vertex map into the second one. Now this is looking at, this vertex map is looking at the nearest point. It's going to be identical. But if we set this to average mode, it's going to start blurring them based on a radius it's looking for. So if we set this to something like 25, you actually see it's blurring from one to the next. Now it's going to be a little bit bigger. It's a little bit bigger than the original one, but it's going to be smoother. It's going to be a lot smoother. So yeah, there we go. So that's smoothed out. I love blurring vertex maps that way. And keep in mind that it's like, okay, let's blur it out. We could blur it more if we want to. Like if we say 55, it's going to start getting really soft. It's really big, but also really soft. And you have to be careful because you can mess it up if you go too far. But we can create a curve modifier layer, and we can start remapping it. So I can start pulling the brightness up by pulling this handle. And you see I can bring all that brightness back in again. Now, as we bring the brightness in, keep in mind you're resharpening up that edge, so it could start standing out. I guess just for the visual, let's create a new material. I wonder if we could create a, I wonder how well that would work in real time. Let's put this on the floor, and I'm gonna make a nice, let's make it kind of just a dark asphalt kind of color. Let's remove the specular. I'm going to add in a, I don't know that this is going to work, but I'm kind of curious. If we make a Beckman, and I'm going to get rid of the specular and let's roughen it up quite a bit. So it's quite shiny everywhere. But if we, in the reflection strength, if we feed the vertex map, will we actually see that in the viewport? It'll work. It'll work everywhere else if it'll work on rendering, but will it work in the viewport? Oh, it seems to sort of be showing up. That's the strength of the reflection is saying to go there. If we put that into a gradient, nope, sorry, I'm thinking of redshift. Put this into a colorizer, and we can make it is white. What we want, yeah, white is where it's showing up. So we want to make the black not all the way black. There we go. So everything's a little bit shiny. So this is actually showing reflection. So yeah, that's actually kind of crazy, but I mean, it's not showing it very well, but this is actually showing reflection. Will it show it in the blurriness? That would show better. Well, I mean, we don't need to worry about that, but yeah, now you can see this is actually translating in real time into a material. In fact, it's going into the reflection channel of a material, and it's going to slowly fade away as a wet map. So it's working all right. Like I said, careful with remapping it up stronger because that's going to reintroduce your edges really sharply. Now, that's fine. I like that. Let's give it a save. Actually, I have to save on the original because we haven't broken anything, but now we're going to break it. Because what I'd love to do would be, I don't know if it's a good idea, but I want the effect to grow. So it's like, oh, the trail's going to get bigger, but then it's also going to fade. So I think what we're going to need to do is combine a couple of different vertex maps here. So I'm going to delete that second one. We've got our original one, and that's doing a fine job of doing a little trail. Now, that's using decay. I wonder if we don't even need decay if we're going to use growth. So I'm going to use a freeze, and the freeze is going to be set to grow. Set to add, and I don't know how far away this wet map is. Let's just eyeball it. So you can see actually that this grow is doing a fine job of doing it by itself. It's remembering as well. It's actually pretty important to hit clear right when you start. Otherwise, it's going to leave those little ones like we saw here. Now, it's not growing, so it's making me think that the radius isn't big enough. So let's say 25. Okay, now it's obviously big enough to grow. Growing way too much, so let's only grow at the rate of 11. There you go. So now you can see that it's growing and spreading out. Okay, cool. So we get the spreading out effect. But now I also still want it to fade as it goes. And there you see there's no way for this to fade. So my thought is let's create a duplicate of that vertex map, and it's doing all the same things. But this time I don't want the freeze. And what I do want is a much larger I do want it to grow, though. I wonder if that would work. I'm going to try using a freeze in the way I haven't before. I'm going to say freeze, and I'm going to say, yes, I want it to grow. I want it to grow a lot. I'm going to say like 55 and a strength of 100, but I'm not going to set it to add. And my thought would be here, let's hit clear. Oh, okay. It's not going to work at all if it's not on add. Okay, so that doesn't work. That's fine. That was a secondary thing, because now what I'm going to do is create a decay. And the decay will remember, but it is going to fade. I want it to fade quicker so we can see the effect more easily. So we got this, and it's going to slowly fade its way out. But I need this to be a lot larger. Now, is there any easy way of making it larger here? Because the freeze would enable us to possibly do it, especially if we set to something like average. And then there's auto update, but it doesn't reference. You see, it already exists in the beginning, so we have to clear out the effect, and then it doesn't acknowledge these. In order to acknowledge it, we'd have to hit add, and if we hit add, it's not averaging them anymore. It just, it doesn't work that way. So I was trying to avoid, but we can't in a way I can think of. I was trying to avoid creating a second cylinder, but I'm going to make a second cylinder, T for scale. I'm going to make this one kind of our maximum width. Oh boy. No, that's fine. They're going to multiply. So let's rename this one big. So I'm going to replace, if you just mouse over it, it's going to replace it with a new one. So this is just, it's just a decay where it's like, I got this big giant splat and it's leaving this larger trail behind it. I think it'd probably be a good idea to give this one a wee little bit to fall off. That should look way smoother. So now you see we've got one effect and then we've got another one, and that one's going to be growing as it goes. But if we take the combination of these two, oops, let me make a second one, or a third one, let's delete that. Let's take in, I'm going to feed in first, it's probably a good idea to name these. This is going to be the big one, big and fade. And we'll take this one and we'll call this one growth. If we feed in big and fade, and then we feed in, I guess the order didn't really matter, growth, if we multiply one on the other one, then they only exist where they both were illuminated. So what should hopefully happen is we'll see how it's growing on the end, but as the original trail moves away from it, it's forced to erase itself out. So we get a growing effect. Oops, don't turn off, just hide. We're getting a growing effect, but only where the two meet. So it will eventually fade away. So it's actually working. It's working pretty well. It's not amazing, but it's pretty good. And then when we brought these in, we could also have averaged them a little bit. So let's average at 55. We'll even average this one. 55, just a little bit of a blur. You see it's way smoother there. The big field would benefit from this getting a little bit wider. And the growth, I'm going to have it grow a little bit faster. And the wet map is not giving us feedback because it is now a new tag that didn't used to exist. So that should be the combination of those two. So now as the trail goes, it doesn't exist before the wheel gets there, but it will grow larger and it will fade away. So it's a combination of vertex maps. I can't help but think that there might be a more elegant way of getting something that grows but also fades. But, and it could be, oh man, yeah, there's could be a lot of different things. Like we might be able to put like a subtract a decay. Yeah, subtracting, you can start doing things like subtracting a decay from something. So you can definitely get interesting. Yeah, that could possibly work. Okay, I'm going to say this is another version just because it's neat. Wetmap, grow and decay. But just for fun, well, it says it's still streaming here. Well, some people said it went down, but other people are saying it's still there. And it's still going for me, so give me a heads up. But thanks for the text, Crossfader. Okay, cool. Weird. Oh, this is nowhere near the longest stream, Tobias. We've gone 4 hours before. Okay. I just saved that version, so I'm going to delete, and let's try again. So this could get weird, but so this is going to grow. So that's growing, and it's just going to be an ever expanding tail. So we're going to stop. And then if we put a decay, that's going to remember more, but I don't know. I'm going to try subtracting the decay. That's immediately killing it. Let's weaken it. Oh, that's interesting almost right away. What is even happening there? Oh, so the decay is remembering. Oh, okay. The decay is remembering the previous state and erasing that out. So it's neat. How would you do that? I'm also thinking you could possibly use a delay and it's set to smooth. So this is going to smooth out the effect. And we probably have to crank up. Yeah, you see it's going to smooth it out and it's going to take longer for that to fade up. But once again, if we subtract, that and start increasing the strength, well, we get a nice ripple. Look at that. It's not exactly what I was going for, but look at that. So it's remembering where it used to be and subtracting that amount, which in the end gives us a ripple effect, which is really cool. It is logical. It makes sense. I will save it for Patreon. So if this theory is going to be correct, it's like we would need the inverse of the freeze. Maybe it's just like an absolute of like subtracting more and more and more and more. Because the freeze is additive. It grows, but it also goes. Now, I do like this ripple. Well, we just saved it, so we're not going to lose it. But I'm going to delete that. And this is going to get weird. Let's create a solid. I'm going to set it to normal. Actually, I'm going to set it to subtract. So now it's subtracting its entire value all the time. But that's going to completely erase it out. And as we start pulling it back, yeah, this might have some promise. If we get the right value, and this might be equivalent to, yeah, that's erasing it out because we're just straight up subtracting that amount overall. Now, what we need to do is make it subtract enough. Whoa, it's weird refreshing when I click, but we might need the growth to happen faster. I'm going to try setting it to 50. So it's growing. Oh, but it would have to grow. This would have to erase it quicker than it can grow because these two forces are fighting each other. You see, if I turn it off, it's going to be a lot stronger. This is creating a feedback loop. And that's what we want. We want a feedback loop. But how can we... Just a full-on solid doesn't make any sense. Now, if we created a folder, we make a duplicate of the entire rig. So now there's a second copy, and we have a second freeze. No, that's just weird. The second freeze, if the second freeze grows faster and subtracts, that's just going to be weird. I think that's just not going to show anything. If it grows slower, it'll show something, I think. Unless these are... Oh, that subtract creates a feedback loop inside that one, so that wouldn't create it at all. Oh, it gets weird. Yeah, well, we've got a group now. Honestly, the specific effect might not even be possible. I feel like it should be. It just goes to, you need to like generate it somehow, and you have to think of like adding and subtracting the effect on top of itself. So, even here we can average it. That might be weird. If the effect strength would be 100, radius of 100 to get the averaging effect. No, that's not much of a thing. Auto update. Oh yeah, see there? Yeah, that's kind of a thing. This is what this is doing is it's seeing what it has below and then blurring it, and the blur is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and as it blurs, it's actually also getting weaker. So that's kind of a thing. So that's the effect. That's the radius. I mean, it's happening again and again and again, not just once. So we might not need the effect to be as strong. Yeah. Okay, that's pretty good. You see it's fading slowly. Now we do have that initial one that's really strong. We could feed one into the other to do it. But now that we're just averaging it, I feel like we could subtract the straight up value from it. So I could say a normal one of those, say -1. No, not -1. That's a full value. And then we're subtracting that. And then we subtract the value. I think I just have to lower the strength. Yeah, the blending strength. So that's way too strong. But if we start lowering it quite low, actually, I imagine it has to be pretty dang low. Yeah, there we go. So do something like this. This is now subtracting a little bit of the value, and you see that this won't leave that long trail forever. And now it is fading away as it goes. So now we have the tools, I think, to work with to make this happen. So we need the freeze. It's got a radius, and the effect strength is happening pretty quick. Let's temporarily turn off the fade. If we put the decay underneath on normal, then that's going to leave a longer trail, and it's going to keep on blurring it. Yeah, you see it's blurring it, so it's essentially growing it. It's hard to see, but it is doing it. You see it starts out small, and it's going to blur more and more and more. The problem, the decay is there, so if we start having the decay be a little bit more heavy, yeah, the decay can start fading away more quickly. It's actually surprisingly resilient, so I'm going to go a little easier on that. Yeah, there we go. So that's a little bit more a trail. It makes it a little more solid, gives a little bit more substance for that to fade. And you see it is blurring and blurring and blurring, but this will never reach zero because it does still have some value. So by taking this solid and just saying, hey, from this entire system, subtract 1%, 1%, 1%, you see it does eventually get to red. So by combining all of these, now we get this thing at full strength. It blurs its way out. It's growing by the average amount. And then the solid is enabling it to finally fade away the entire way. And that's actually working pretty well. This initial value being fed in, once again, we can control that via giving this a little bit of fall off, which will make that a lot smoother on the initial input. Weaker, but smoother. The alternative, of course, being we'll feed that in full power and make a duplicate. So instead, the only thing that this is going to do is give it the cylindrical field. So that's just like this straight up value. And then this will not have the cylindrical field. It'll import the first one as an average. And we saw 100 is usually pretty good. Now let's set the 55 to chill it out a little bit. And there we go. Now you see it comes in already pre-blurred. And now all the effects can happen, and you get the nice fade out. You got to be careful on how far. Like, if I blur it a little bit, you can start seeing the edges. It's a little, your resolution is highly dependent. If we had twice as many polygons on the surface, then we could have half as much blurring because there'd just be better resolution for the blur. It's all about what the eye is going to see. But I do like that. I wonder how much we could remap it to be brighter. It's possible. I'm not sure though. If we take that's just going to remap everything before the subtraction, or maybe even it would be post subtraction. But yeah, if I pull this up, you see the whole thing's going to brighten up a lot. I just want to see if this. Oh yeah, you got to be careful because it's going to overwhelm it because now it's getting. This is every iteration is actually brightening it more than it's subtracting, and I actually don't think there's a way around that. We're going to subtract. I mean, these are two values that could fight each other. But as far as remapping it, that's going to be rough. But the way I would actually do that, instead of remapping it that way, would be what we're importing here. This has our decay and whatnot. But if in the original value, we actually have a lot of control over what the original input is. So that's coming in. It's very small, and it's not very powerful. So we could, of course, grab our cylinder. And I'm just going to T for scale. And we'll just have the initial input be a little bit stronger. But in addition to that, if we put a second decay in this, and that's at the maximum, and I don't want to go for too long, but here's our input. This is what we're going to be feeding in. So you see we actually have this initial longer trail with a lot more power. And that, in this vertex map, is what's getting fed into our second one, which means there's way heavier strength in the very beginning of it, which is going to add more power to the overall system. So now it's a much stronger tail, but we're not getting that feedback loop that makes everything too powerful. So you see we still get the nice fade happening everywhere. And yeah, it's just another good feedback loop. We could have this radius or the effect be weaker. I'm going to set that to 25, so it's going to blur a lot less. So it's going to take longer for it to spread, but at the same time, I want the solid to subtract less. I'm going to set the 0.5, so it's going to be half the amount. So it's going to blur slower, but it should also fade it out a little bit slower. So now we're going to get a longer trail, but you see it's still growing, and it's going to take longer to fade out, but it will fade out. And it is important to do that because this is still a growing freeze. But yeah, that's gorgeous. Like it's nice and big and then eventually fades out really small. Yeah, a lot of interesting combinations there. But yeah, I'm glad we figured out a way of getting that one. And this wheel's been working out really well for us as well. And just for anybody who'd be curious, we could, if we create a second tire, drag it over. Yeah, I'm not going to do any connectors or anything. But if we just go back to this original one, and all I have to do is drag in that cylinder as well, set those to add on top of each other. So those both become inputs, and now we have two being fed in on the original source. And you only have to change on one because you get these, one's getting fed in the next, one's getting fed in the next. So that works great. And for the simplified one, we don't need the big ones. And we should make this one rotate differently. Let's go negative 99. Roll! Whoa, whoa. It's like Back to the Future went wrong. Wow. Excellent. I'm quite pleased with that. Let me just feed this material into the reflection channel just so it's got it. Vertex map. Boop. I wonder if the I'll spend a second and just see if the blur works. I'm curious if we feed this in the roughness channel. I'm going to feed it the same colorizer. And let's take a look at the material. And that's how blurry it should get. And it's a multiplier on top of that. So that should be quite blurry. So let's see, how would this work? Black is shiny, white is blurry. So along these lines, these would now, yeah, these are going to be very blurred. They're very shiny, but they're very blurry. So let's pull back on that. So there we go. So it's a little blurred. We can go relatively subtle on that. Yeah. So those are now very blurred. But we could, the more that these are remapped, the higher the contrast is going to be. So we can have these not be so strong. So that's just blurring it. So if we were literally making this a wet map, then those can be affecting those maps directly. And it's just really cool that these are showing in the viewport. Like I'm impressed that those are going to successfully do that. Blur, blur, blur. In the viewport, no less. Very nice. Yeah, that was a really great update to be able to get the viewport to see all this. I will save this one as grow and fade. Yeah, this is a completely different take on doing it instead of feeding it two different versions. Oh yeah, and bump. That's a good idea. Let's do it just for a split second because it's that would look neat. So yeah, there's a bump strength, so we can feed in mode. And this is on top of the bump. So in here we feed a bump. So let's make a nice nice liquidy bump. A little smaller, 25%. Yeah, nice. A little strong. All right, and then in here, we can drag in the same material again. And let's make sure it has, I'm going to reset it to default. And let's see what they kind of look like by default. So this is, I think, lessening the bump. So if we invert this, everything is going to have, or is that not? Maybe this one doesn't actually do in real time. Mode. I'll put a custom bump here. Maybe it'll acknowledge that one. Copy. Paste. Doesn't seem. Yeah, it's not acknowledging the bump in real time. It would in the render, but it's not in real time, which is too bad. Yeah, it's not, or the strength is, no, that's everything. Yeah, it's uniform there. So yeah, unfortunately the bump doesn't get acknowledged in it, but it would in the render. Let's clear that out. But it still looks cool with the bump on here. Now these are pretty big vertex maps. You can see it's giving me quite the hit in the scene file as well. And there's a lot of things you could potentially do on top of it. We could be tracing completely unrelated. We could be tracing a trail here, but ultimately, if it's going to feed into a material, well, you could trace it and then put that in a proximal. I've even found ways of you can use a proximal. You can trick a proximal to using scale by feeding a polygon scale. So by cloning a series of flat planes, you can actually scale a spline into a proximal. But that should wrap that one up. I agree. Pro Tools, that would be neat. Let's see. Lots of conversation happening in there. Yeah, the heavily subdivided mesh. That's definitely a limitation here. I can't think of any way of doing it outside of that. I mean, we'd need. It's got to be a vertex map. It's the only thing that can store the data. So yeah, hi everybody. Thanks for hanging out. So AB is still hanging out in here, and I promised him that we would try and do some very basic IK and auto binding. So let's see if we can make that happen. In fact, let's see if we can. I can't share that file, but we could use one of those cinema meshes. Actually, we'll just use a figure. I like using the figure. Okay, everybody. Excuse me. Talking for 2.5 hours straight without a sip of water. All right, so we're going to open up a new scene file, and here's the plan. We are going to essentially try and rig up a character in the most basic way from scratch and bind to the mesh and deal with like mesh binding problems. And it's going to be a little bit funky because we're going to just work from a figure. There's a lot of different things we could do, but I'm going to make a figure, create a connect object, and feed him in. I'm not going to weld, but now he's baked down to a single mesh. And now instead of just having these individual pieces, we're going to try and rig it in the basic way. And the entire point here is to show you that, I know, I always get, people can make some incredible things with it, but I'm always kind of annoyed when I see people rigging with bend deformers, because joints are not that difficult. So let's begin with as basic as we can IK rig. So yeah, we'll start from looking at on the front view. Under character, we can create a joint, and I'm going to move the joint right to where we want that to bend. Now, technically, because of the way we're building them, I think we actually want to move it up to here. And we don't have to, but I'm going to rotate this down 90 degrees so that it's Z. Oh, I guess I wanted it the opposite, 90 degrees. Negative 90, because I want it pointing on Z. Now, you don't necessarily need it to be, but it's kind of a cleaner workflow. I'm going to scoot this down, and as soon as I scoot this, I made a copy of it as a child, and now that it's a child, I can start moving it downward. I can move it right into the middle of the knee, and then grab this top one, hit R for rotate, and rotate that until it's in the proper orientation. So, actually, before I go too far, I want this leg to be straight, so I'm going to make a second child and move this down onto the ankle, and then we're just going to rotate this to match both. So that's just going to be there. It's not going to perfectly line up with the knee, but that's fine. We don't need to make them all weird and bendy and angled. Now, something's going to be important. And actually, why don't we go ahead and even break what we were just doing already? Because we're going to make IK. There's something that's very, very important. Cinema 4D's IK needs to know what the orientation is. Right now, this is a perfectly straight line. So it doesn't know which way forward is. So if we just turn on the axis tool and I scoot this forward just a little bit, and honestly, we want to do that because we want to match the leg a little bit better. If I just bend that forward, and if we want to, we can grab the foot and put it in the center of the ankle, and we grab this, and maybe that one's pretty centered, but maybe take it back a hair. Now it has orientation. So just with that, let's make this IK. So we're going to right click on the top joint and say rigging IK. This tag is great, and it's really straightforward if you use it this way. The first thing it wants to know is, where is the end? Where does this IK joint end? Now, if we're building a normal limb, it's only essentially 2 joints, which translates to 3 objects. So it's the start, the middle, and the end. So we feed it the end. So here's the end. I'm going to drag that into the end. Now, all we have to do is click Add Goal, and then we click add pole, and we're done. We've now made an IK, a very basic IK setup. Now you see we have a pole right here, and I can grab it and scoot it forward. And I should turn off the axis tool. Oh, it was off. Scoot that forward, and you can see that we have this nice pink line aiming at it. And now we have our goal, and you'll see the instant I grab this and I go to move it, look at that. We have a leg bending up and down. This now wants to go, the start point wants to go wherever the joint is, and the end point wants to go wherever the goal is. And it's going to aim in the direction of this knee. Now, just for some housekeeping, I'm going to create while holding Alt, I'm going to create a end side, hit T for scale and scale it way down. And that's just going to be like this little ankle control. And the axes are pretty funky, so I'm going to grab this top one. I had the joint pointed downward, so I'm going to grab this end side and say 0, 0, 0, and now the rotation is back to like world default, and then I'm going to lay the plane flat on the ground. Excellent. So what's great about that is I can now move this end side, and the end side is telling it where it's going to go. And it's just a lot more visual to grab that than trying to grab the end of a null. And then you could do the same thing here with the knee. And actually what I typically do, it's probably not the best, well, it's just an arbitrary way, but I'm going to make a text object. I'm just going to call it K, and that just is going to stand for knee. So when I have this random K floating in the middle of nowhere, and I should probably also zero out its axis, 0, 0, 0. It's going to aim up in the air, T for scale, shrink it down. And now when I select this floating letter K, that's going to grab the direction of the knee. Excellent. So with that little bit of housekeeping, and let's name this foot, name that one knee. As we make a couple of these, it's going to become important that these are named. And that is actually his left foot. So let's put an L foot, L knee. All right, nice. So very, very basic setup there. Okay, we'll copy and paste this. And then we'll do it again from scratch on the arm just to iterate. So let's copy and paste this entire setup, copy paste. And this, well, I mean, there's a couple things we do. We could technically mirror it. I tend to, the mirroring tool in Cinema is pretty great for some things, but sometimes you can hit its limitations, and that can be a little frustrating. So I'm going to mirror that, and it seems like I did a good job this time. So you can see it, but nothing was weighted yet, which has made it even better. So you see everything got mirrored over. I could have renamed it, but let's just rename that R. Oops, not both of them. Wait, okay, fine. I'm just going to undo and let the tool do it. Actually, I probably wouldn't do a great job because I didn't say left. I just said L. Oh, stop. Okay, hang on. Sorry, slow down. Grab everything, remirror. Mirror tool, mirror. Just left L, default mirrored. And now I can grab, is the copy, that's not the copy. So the second one's a copy. I was about to rename all of them wrong anyway. So that'll be right. And that will be right. And that will be right. Excellent. So we've got some legs. Now, how should we do the torso? I want to keep it simple. So I think I'm just going to do an FK torso. So simulate, what I'm talking about. I've been doing too much ragdoll dynamic rigging. So here's that'll kind of be the pelvis. This will be the waist. And then that's going to go up to the neck. And this will be the head. So let's even name that. Pelvis. Waist. Neck. Head. Tip. All right, nice. Now, let's very quickly do the IK again from scratch on, and I don't think I'm not going to specifically rig the hands or the feet for that because we're already going beyond the scope that I was originally saying we were going to do here. But once again, let's do this from scratch. Oh, actually, before we do, I'm going to move these two legs as a child of the pelvis, which is like, wherever the pelvis goes, the legs should go. And actually, what's cool about this is because we already did the IK on that, I haven't saved this yet, so we should definitely save it. Basic rigging. If I grab the pelvis and I move it, watch the legs. Look, we get both legs are going to be stuck in place. Excellent. All right, so now, I mean, we should probably put controls on the pelvis and all that, but like I said, I don't want to push the scope too far. So let's rig the arms. We'll start from scratch with a new character, a joint. Scoot this up into the air. Move it over to the arm. I'll just eyeball it again. You know what, this time I'm not even going to bother rotating them. Let's just make a second one. Put it here. And we'll make this one. And we'll put it right there. Top view. Move this here. Hit the letter L for the axis tool, so I can move this without moving the child. And actually, 7 also does that, but let's turn off L because that's now correct. And now we've got our arm. So this is the L arm. Right click, rigging, IK. What do? We take the end joint to that sequence of the, just the 1, 2, 3, end, add a goal, add a pole, it automatically creates it. We already have this bent a little bit so it knows what the direction is. If we grab the pole for the elbow, I can pull this back in the air. There you see it. And here is the tip of the hand. So I can create another end side for the hand. I held down Alt, which automatically made it a parent. I didn't rotate them this time, so it is laying flat on the ground. T for scale, right there for the wrist. And we're being somewhat organized, so I'll also make the text object for the elbow. Just name it the letter E, T for scale, E, then D acknowledge. And then we can grab, so this becomes L, E, and this becomes L, wrist. And then we can mirror that. So I'll select that entire section. Click the character mirror tool. Let's go to the front. This is going to mirror based on the snapped POV. So if we look at it from this angle, it'll actually mirror it the wrong way. If we look at it from this angle, it'll mirror it the correct way. So there you go. Mirrored it perfectly over there. These are the mirrors. So R, R, R. Excellent. And now these two arms go into the waist as a child, because anywhere the waist goes, those should go. And the elbows are seemingly correct. So I'm going to move this entire the entire joint system down lower. We've got all of our controls here. I like colorizing them. I'm not going to go too far. I'm just going to turn them on, turn it to a nice bright green, and now those stand out as controls. Excellent. And now I guess we can save it and then save it again. So that's quick saved and then saving a second time, because now this is going to be the weighting. Alrighty, let's see if we can get this to work. I'm going to expand this entire hierarchy of all the joints. And now we've got a nice, very basic character setup. It's all laid out nicely there. So having all those selected, I'm going to hold down Control and also select our mesh. So mesh is also selected. Now I think all we have to do is go to Character, Bind. And I'm not even going to change any settings. So you see, first I have all the joints selected, and then a piece of the mesh. Hit Bind, and it should automatically do all the calculations for us. It is spinning in a way that's oh, that's interesting. Do you remember, well, in the bonus stream, we were transferring weights and it was like really spinning. I wonder if they changed something in the algorithm where it makes it run slower. It took a little bit to do it, but you can see what it automatically just did for us is it created a skin deformer, and you'll see, actually, no, there's nothing involved in that because it's just, this skin deformer is automatically created. And what it's doing is it's looking for its associated weight tag. And this weight tag is now has every single one of these joints inside of it. Now, something that gets interesting is if we go to, if I double click on that, you can now see that we're seeing it from the POV of the weight tool. And we can now see how every one of those individual weights is being applied and colorized. So just by doing that, I mean, there might be some cross-contamination, but literally not making any other changes. Let's see how well that bound the character. So I'm going to grab the pelvis here. And I guess I should say, I'm going to save it as a new iteration. I'm going to grab the pelvis and let's move it down and look at that. It's pretty good. Boing, 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 boing. And now we can dance. And we can grab the foot and raise it up. Yeah, look at that. That's actually pretty incredible, all things considered. That's doing an absolutely amazing job. Wow, that's almost too good. I don't understand why they're bending so nicely. Now you can see now this, even though the knee is bending brilliantly, like it's going really well. You can see here, you can see that this is actually flexing. This isn't like bending the model. It's actually weighted. So those points are bending with it. But yeah, we can individually move a foot. We can place this wherever we want. We can move these around. Now you got to keep in mind, so when it comes to IK, we don't get to talk about this stuff too often. But as soon as this IK line crosses the knee threshold, you see that green line? Once that green line passes the pink line, it's going to flip the opposite direction. So that's why these knees get brought out as separate objects, where as we move this up, it goes too far. It's like, oh, well, that's okay. We can just grab the knee, the correct knee, and I can move that further, and it'll recorrect it. But as we move the character around, we'd have to keep those in mind. So you just got to keep those nice and clean. Now, let's spend a few minutes just doing some quick keyframing, because why not? I'm going to grab all of his current controls, and let's try doing the freeze. I very rarely use the freeze transformation, but I'm going to grab all of the controls, and under, you can twirl down under coordinates, freeze transformation. I'm going to say freeze all. And now what's cool about that is if I click on any of these controls, all of their numbers are 0, 0, 0, which means I can mess up this character a lot. I'm going to move that. Let's move this. Let's move the hand. Let's move a foot. I can move all those controls, and I can just go back to all of them and hit reset PSR, and boom, it snaps back into its original position. So that's good. Now, we did not, I guess it's just a few minutes. I mean, we're already making a nice little character, so let's just spend a minute or two putting the final controls on the waist, the neck, and the head. So what I'm going to do, let's see, what's the quickest way to do this? Actually, I'm going to just copy and paste this entire rig. And this is just like a throwaway rig, so I'm going to delete a bunch of stuff from it. And these are the 3 controls that we want. So I'm actually going to even yank them out. And I'm going to just select the pelvis and say, I'm going to make another inside. And it's correctly rotated to nothing. Lay it flat on the ground. T for scale. Make that the waist. I'm going to do the same thing here on the neck. In fact, I'm just going to move a copy there and reset the PSR. So it's going to snap to the neck. And let's make one on the waist. Reset PSR. So that's on the waist. I'll scale that down a little bit more. And scale this one down a little bit. And then we can grab all 3. Let's see, this one I'm going to call waist. This one I'm going to call neck and pelvis. Now, normally, like, there's a good chance that things would be rotated to very unusual angles and whatnot. We have to put nulls, but because we did this one so simple and so clean, we don't have to worry about that. So now some of these controls you might actually want to be children, and in this case I do want the waist to be a child of the pelvis. I want the neck to be a child of the waist, even in case of controls. If I move the hip, I want the torso to move with it. So those will become children that way. I'm going to select that entire hierarchy and also freeze the transformation. So those are zeroed out. Now, all I have to do is right click. Let's save it. I'm going to right click on the pelvis and add a rigging constraint tag, and we'll turn on PSR. And this is now going to snap it straight to the position and rotation of an object. And that is just, in this case, going to be straight up the pelvis. Nothing should move because we made these based off the locations of the other one. Now, I'm actually going to intentionally break this one just to save a second. I'm going to copy this tag to the waist. It's actually going to yank the waist down to the pelvis. But as soon as I relink to the waist, it's going to pop it back in the proper location. That's only something you do if you're very confident in the positions, which I am. We just made that very clean, so I could very easily copy those. Now, I just want to make sure, these are, the order of operations getting calculated here is naturally the correct one, so we don't have to reorder any of those. So really, it does not get much more simple than this. So let's see, just for organizational purposes, what I would typically do is make a final control here that I'd lay flat on the ground and leave extra big, and that's the overall character's position. And I would make that one a different color. Actually, we'll grab all of these. And I'm going to turn on. We'll also make them green, but this one I will make yellow. So that's like the base one. And now I'm going to grab all of our character controls and put it inside of that character control. And yeah, it's already at 000, so that's fine. And if you were super organizing your character, like you want to make more than one, let's rename that one Geo. Actually, even typically what I do is make a null, and I'd call this one controls. And I'd make a copy, and I'd call this one like joints or rig. And I make a third one, and I call this one Geo. So the controls go in the controls, the rig goes in the rig, geometry goes in the geometry, and then we make one final null, and that just contains everything. Now that is our character. And as long as we're going all the way on this one, I'm going to expand all these controls, and I'm going to select all of our spline controls. And with these spline controls selected, we can add them to a layer. Basic, I'm going to go basic, add new layer. And then I guess we kind of want to select everything else. So I'm going to, well, I mean, we can just visually hide them. But what I usually would do would be like all these extra nulls in here, like that, those are fine, but I don't want those getting in our way. And maybe grabbing that controls, maybe leave it in the character one. But I can grab all those and then add it to another layer and add to new layer. And now we can go into our layer controls, and we'll just call blue controls, and rename the other one, let's say rig details. And in the rig details, I can now turn them off in the hierarchy, and we could even, if we want to, turn them off in the viewport. So now all the extra stuff will be hidden, and we won't see any of those. Personally, I don't like seeing these lines from the rig, so I usually go into the IK controls, and under display, I'm going to turn off the handle line, or no, here. This is a pole vector. Now, if I do have it, I prefer it from the joint, which is actually the midpoint, which is actually kind of what's pulling it. But I can also just say none. So that is now visually hidden as well. And now if we are going to begin working on the character, I'm going to hide the rig. And now we just have these controls ready to go. And if you're going extra far, here we're doing the whole character process here. I'm going to select all these character controls, and while they're selected, I'm going to go up to the select menu and say selection filter and say create selection object. And I'm just going to rename this one all. So those are now all of my character's controls. So that means if I double click it, automatically I select every control of the character. So that's really good for keyframing purposes. Now we need to also set this up for auto keyframing. So this is going to be really straightforward because I'm going to select all the controls except for the knee and the knees and the elbows. We don't need those. But when it comes to all of these getting keyframed, we don't have any extra espresso controls or anything, and we didn't even build in controls with hands or feet, so we won't be able to go too far with this. But if we go to the coordinate tab, what I'm going to do is right click on position, like the P, so I get all three of them. And I can right click and I can say animation, add keyframe selection. And I'm going to select the R for rotation, and I'm going to say animation, add keyframe selection. You see that they've actually been highlighted slightly. Now I'm also going to grab the elbows now and the feet, or the elbows and the knees. And then I'm going to grab just position because rotation does not matter on those. So I'm going to say animation, add keyframe selection. So now on all of our controls, if we have all this stuff turned on, we have position and scale and rotation, all those things turned on. But if I have these selected and then I hit keyframe, you see the only things that got recorded are the things I marked for animation. It did not record the scale. It didn't record any of these extra parameters. It didn't record the plane or the reverse or anything. So those got directly recorded. So that should all be set up and completely ready for animation. So let's save this as another version, and let's just do a couple of keyframes here just to test out the very basics of the rig. That's a good book. Well, somebody's saying the Patreons will be happy right now. It's a good chance to repeat that anybody who's supporting on Patreon will get access to these scene files to play around with. So let's rename this. What I renaming? Oh, there it is. Character rigging. Why did I lose the name? Oh, I named it 1. Oops. Oh well. So this will be 1C, and it'll be, I guess this one's rigged. All right, so that is rigged and it's all ready for animation. Now, if we're actually going to start keyframing something that is useful and important is you want to keyframe your 0 pose. So I already did, but I just hit keyframe and you can see that it's recorded those. Now you can grab this keyframe and rewind it to like -1 so it's hidden. But in this case, I think we're fine. Now, if I was going to start recording, what's an action? When it comes to keyframing, we can do anything. So, hey, Smecca and a bunch of people. See, I never get to talk about this stuff. We've got, and run cycles are boring. Let's make them do something more complicated in the run cycle. What we can, I'm a big fan of just straight ahead keyframing, straight ahead keyframed animation. So we can make them do any action. So what do we want him to do? I mean, we can do cartwheels, flips, jump, something that's not a walk, because walks are, it's not that interesting to me. We can do something interesting. A backflip, a Trinity kick. Oh, okay. Well, so far backflip's winning. It's nice and straightforward. Well, not straightforward, but like it's an action we can do. I'm not going to make them floss. Somebody says floss. Somebody says not floss. Kickball. Oh, kicking ball would be straightforward. So, but well, I like the idea of backflip because it's going to use the entire body. So let's do that. Okay, so if I was going to do straight ahead animation, here's what I like to do. And I learned this from a teacher at Animation Mentor named Demos. Is we're going to go, he could start in his T pose, but let's start him out in some sort of other position. Now, technically, it'd probably be better if these arms were IK and not currently, if these were FK rather than IK, but let's set him in his very first position. So we don't want him in the T pose to start out. So, and I wish we had put at least the foot controls in, but whatever. So, okay. So we'll do this a couple different ways, and actually, yeah, it's fine to do it this way. And then the feet, like the feet are just going to rotate and look all funky. So, we'll just have to ignore that, but we'll just take a foot. I think we can't rotate the foot because of the way it's locked. I just undid. I shouldn't have done that. Okay. Okay. That's actually, it's kind of good. I just did that. So I was putting him to his pose and I just hit undo to undo something. And all of his parts jumped back to their original position. And that is because those were keyframed, and it's just something that's going to trip you up. So you have to keep on hitting keyframe, or we can hit this red button. And this red button is so dangerous that they put an outline around the viewport. What this is auto keyframing. That means anything we move, any parameter or anything we change that's been marked for animation, if we move it, it is getting keyframed. But that means undoing won't break anymore. So let's move this back here, move it down. Oh, and if we're going to do keyframe, if we're going all the way in here, I'll show you the entire process. Do you see right now I'm like trying to grab the handle and I'm accidentally grabbing the model? Something we can do is we can go to select up here and we go to selection filter. And right now we can select all these things. I'm going to say I want to select none of those things, and then go back to the menu and say, actually, I just want to select splines. So now in the viewport, I'm only able to select splines. So I'm going to go ahead and move this, and now it's going to be very quick to instantly grab these. So if you're in like animation mode, it is very quick to just go and grab these. So his foot is going to aim whatever direction his knee is. So it's just something we did, but and we'll lower his hips down a little bit, and let's give him a little bit of a tilt, and we'll counter animate the waist the other way. So there, he's looking a little sassy, and might as well move the head a little bit. And then I'm actually going to, that's fine. And you see, okay, so he's in a new default pose, and I'm going to double click all and then hit record, because everything got recorded that got changed, but not everything got recorded. And if we're doing this step-by-step animation, like straight ahead, we should record everything every frame. So I just made sure to record everything. Now I am going to turn off recording for a second, just to make a very quick material, just something to help us see when he's rotating and which way he's facing. So under color, I'm going to create we'll just do another checkerboard. I like the checkerboard. Let's see. Actually, let's make that blue color again. What color even was that blue? It was kind of oh, dude, that's like my new favorite color. Just like this rich, like a dark light blue. We'll do that and then make it a lighter gray. Yeah, those are nice colors. Put it on the geo. There we go. So now we can see when something's rotating a little bit more. All right, so that becomes our very first pose. So now we just go forward 1 frame. So I'm not worrying about time yet. So that is the first frame. So now we're gonna do this really quickly. So he's gonna get ready for a backflip. So technically, well, I'm just gonna do it. We'll do the in-betweens afterwards. So I'm gonna derotate let's auto keyframe. Derotate, move this down, rotate back. I'm going to move this down. He's going to prep for once again, we're just going to ignore the feet because we didn't rig those. So he's going to crouch down, and then his elbows will have to move down, and his hands will move forward into kind of this crouch. His waist should bend forward. His head will bend forward. Let's move this hand forward and down. Let's move the elbows down. And if he's getting ready to jump, we should probably move his hands way down. And now you can see how easy it is to grab these controls now that I'm only selecting, I'm only able to select splines. So tilting that forward even more is probably a good idea. And then we can counter rotate him back because that's the way his waist was. Okay, so maybe not the craziest crouch. And I gotta say, I don't know how to do a backflip personally, so I'm just guessing. I'm gonna hit record again. So now you can see I can go back a frame, forward a frame. So there's our 2 poses so far. So let's go to the next one. And right now I'm just doing key poses. So let's go straight to him in his stretched out point. Well, he's gonna do a backflip, so let's kind of stretch him back out again. Now, personally, I think that this pose, the stretched out pose, is closer to this one. So I'm actually going to copy that frame by going to frame 1, holding Alt, and then going to frame 3. Now we can hit record, and now now we can go from here back to here. But now we'll modify this one. So he's getting ready to do a backflip. So it probably means his arms they moved forward. We'll deal with that later. So mostly his arms are just going to go up. So we'll pull the arms up. And let's see, if you were jumping, I guess your elbows would go forward. So let's grab the elbows, pull those forward. I'm going to straighten out his neck and head. So you see I just actually right-clicked on those to straighten those out. In fact, I'm going to straighten out the rotation here as well. So that'll be nice and straight. I want these all going up. So I'm going to select all 3, move all of them up. Actually, yeah, he'll just get kind of stretched out like that. And then because we can't tilt his feet down, it's just like he's going to be in the stretched out position. Now he's supposed to be doing a backflip. So I guess everything might want to be back a little bit more, but let's just do a standing one. So once again, select everything, keyframe, make sure everything got keyframed. So now what we got, he's standing, ducks down, stretches out, and now we start doing some of the other poses. So now we're essentially going to the peak of his jump. So I think actually it's probably gonna be a good idea to grab every single control except for the character one, not the character one. These are all gonna go in the air. I don't know how high he's gonna go. We'll go about that high. And then I'm just gonna rotate all of them like this. It's gonna look a little bit weird right now, but I think it'll look fine when we're done. So I'm worried about his hip being still centered. So he's jumping way too high, but that's fine. We're doing a cartoony character. Okay, so all those have moved. All of them have rotated. Let's just make sure I can go back. So I think I just overrode. I accidentally forgot to go forward a frame. That's fine. We didn't do too much. I'm going to go forward a frame and now do that again. Did I override? Oop. Okay, I got to undo one more time. There we go. Sorry about that. Okay, now, very important. It's very easy to make those kind of mistakes. Okay, jumping, rotating. Actually, here's a neat trick. I mentioned this the other day to somebody and they're like, what? So you see, I've got every object selected and then this is the axis, and the axis is the average of everything we have selected. And you see when I spin him, he's pivoting around this axis point. But you see how we actually see there's an axis, an axis, an axis. Those are all the axes of all of the objects we have selected. But I can actually just click on any one of those axes and it'll snap to controlling that one. It's not controlling that one, it's just pivoting from that one. So now I'm pivoting from the waist and all of them will move relative to that, just for that one little selection there. So yeah, there. Now he's rotated on the next frame 90 degrees. So now he's jumping up. Let's even go higher because that didn't go too high. So that's the basic movement. But now let's start making it look like a little something. So we'll grab the waist and we'll really bend it in. We'll grab the head, tilt it way down. And then the knees, I imagine, have to curl way into the body. And these knees are okay, but just for safety, I'm going to move them up into the air a little bit more. Let's see, if you were doing a backflip, you go like that. And then I guess your arms just kind of go close to your shoulder. Looking at reference here would be a really good idea, but I'm going to do that and select the elbows, pull these back. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So there we go. Once again, select all, keyframe, one frame forward, very important. All right, they're all selected, not the body, pivot from the waist again. So he's just going to keep spinning. I don't think it's going to change that much, honestly. So let's not worry about that too much. I mean, the height will probably change and all that, but we'll fix that as we check out the frames, because I just don't know how the arcs should be. I mean, I guess technically he's probably going a little bit higher. I'm going to turn on world axis and just scoot this straight up a little bit. And now that's fine. Select all, keyframe, one frame forward. And let's finish out his rotation. Select all, pivot from the waist, R for rotate, and spin him, his complete spin. And we're going to start lowering him down. In fact, he's going to lower down quite a bit, maybe like there. And that's fine. Let's see, there. Okay, good. Let's start straightening some stuff out. I'm actually going to grab the wrists and pivot from the waist. Have that all spin out. So he's doing that. So I think on the way down, he should stretch out quite a bit again. So his legs, because we really want to build in, you build in your squash and stretch in these moments. So he's actually falling quite a bit. So you can see, well, here his arms were here. So we don't want the arms to go up too much. We need to fix the elbows. The head would go up. It's just like everything is going to kind of go at the direction of travel. And, you know, the wrists are a little static in these flips, but let's go and start. I mean, is that even right? When you're flipping, his elbows seem to be wrong. I might have his arms broken right now. We'll see it as we go. Blink. Yeah, that makes a little more sense. Did we have it wrong here? Yeah, we did. Well, it's really easy. We keyframe everything. So here his elbows should be there. And then one back. Yep, I had his, that looks painful. So we'll move those forward. Really easy to fix. Yes, that makes more sense. Bing. Okay, cool. So now you see he's down, up, stretch in the air, he compresses himself, starts spinning, starts falling back to the ground. I feel like here everything should be up a little bit more. So let's just right now move everything up, back a frame. This is still traveling up, so I'm gonna move it down. So here it's like up. Let's go up more, and then suddenly down. We're definitely in the in-between frame there, but that's fine for now. So let's keyframe all, select our all, keyframe, one more frame forward, and now we get our compression frame. So he's compressing. So we pretty much want, I think we want the feet to pretty much go back to their original position. So I'm gonna say 0, 0 on their positions. We can't trust the rotations because we've done a full 360, but we can trust positions. So yeah, see this rotation is a full 360 now, and we have to keep that full 360. So I'm gonna pull the waist way down. He's gonna super compress. If we want maximum compression, that means his back has to tilt backwards so we can counter tilt the waist very far forward. We're probably gonna go pretty cartoony on it. So I'm gonna like super compress certain things in certain moments. And now these hands will go down and the elbows will have flipped to their opposite position down here. We'll probably need an in-between frame for that as well. Head, R for rotate, spin down, like really compress. I mean, this is, you know, like way down. And then keyframe all, frame forward. And now, essentially, it's just go back to default. So it'll go back up. We'll do a lot more motion and kind of follow through. This will be negative 360 because he has spun around once. Waist 0, neck 0, elbows back, hands up over here. Knees are fine. Move the hand down a little bit. Yeah, okay. A fine normal pose. Grab it all. Make sure everything's keyframed. All right, now let's very carefully, in fact, let's just visually hide. Oh, yeah, we'll just hide the controls from the viewport. So now, T-pose, which we can ignore. In fact, I'm just going to pop us up one frame so we don't ever see it. So we got our sassy start, compress, stretch, begin going back. Oop, I hit frame. So compress, stretch, compress again, but starting to flip, turn some more, and then lands, compresses, settles. So that is our motion right now. But now what we can start doing is adding in our in-betweens, getting some in-betweens. So, and it's still, I'm not going to worry about timing yet. So essentially I'm going to find the poses that are most lacking in information. So those are fine. But then I think between here and here, we definitely need some information in between. So I'm going to actually just select, I've got all the controls selected. If I select these 3 keyframes, I can scoot it back one. And now if I go here, now we're getting the in-between pose. Let's deselect. We're getting the in-between pose that used to be the halfway point between there and there. So you can see it's definitely a little bit messed up. Now, let's grab the knees. Those clearly are having trouble transitioning in the right direction, so we can pull those forward. And then the elbows. These should be back, right? Well, I guess, yeah. Does that make sense? So the elbows are forward, so his arms are maybe, I'm not sure. We'll have to do more transition there. So yeah, what's the point being is we now have an in-between from there to here. So let's see, up, over, and then down, compress. So, okay, that's fine. It's not super fancy. Let's make sure that everything is keyframed in this new in-between keyframe. And now I think that we've got our compression frame, and we've got our leap and then compress. What are some more in-betweens I'm worried about? Like that one's probably pretty messed up. So let's grab all those. Oh, sorry, having a little bit of trouble snagging all of them. There we go. Hoop. All right, now we got an in-between here. It's actually not terribly messed up. So not bad. Automatically, I'm going to keyframe all of them. So now only changes will be relevant. So his arms are back behind his head. Here, his arms snuck in front of his body a little bit, so we got to fix those. So these will go up again. And the elbows are fine. The knees are fine. Actually, everything was pretty good. We just needed to fix those arms. So like boom, boom, boom. Do you see how the animation's filling out a little bit more now? So up, up. I feel like his center of mass feels a little bit weird, but because he probably should be pivoting around his center of mass and not just around his pelvis. But those go around. Is that still an in-between? Yeah, I guess so. We definitely need an in-between here. Like going from there to there, it's a huge rotation. So let's make sure we grab everything. Scoot them all forward. Now we see our new in-between. Definitely see it's messed up a little bit. Immediately record, and now only fixes will get recorded. So our knees need to know which direction they were traveling here, which was down. A lot of the rest of it's actually pretty good. So the elbows will go up. The hands went a little bit forward. Let's move these back again. He's still compressed, kind of covering his ears, la, 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 la. And let's move these into a more advantageous position. And now hopefully something you'll start seeing is we're going to start seeing arcs emerge, and arcs are incredibly important. If you just look at the elbow I have selected right here, you can see that's traveling. It's very, we don't have too many keyframes yet, but you see it's traveling in a loop here for the direction, and that is a good sign. We can click on the pelvis. You see it's pretty much just moving straight up and down. You can kind of only see the ones that are moving in free space, but now let's see what we got. So back to the 0, let's frame everything and let's see how it goes. So compress, jump, flip, 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 and then boom, compress. Very nice. Okay, it's starting to fill out a little bit. We can see the animation starting to emerge from this. So I think the next frame I'd like to see is this, the in-between between those two. So how does he get to this stretched out frame? So I'm gonna grab everything, hold down shift to deselect, select everything except for that. Oh, no, I need that one as well. Let's grab everything, including frame 3, scoot it by 1. There we go, halfway point. Excellent, immediately keyframe. And let's see, his arms are going from elbows down to up. So they definitely need to go forward. Elbows out, forward, very nice. Now this, we're trying to build the halfway point between here. So this, we might be able to introduce a little bit more animation. So we're going from super compressed to the halfway point. So his, I feel like maybe his body, I'm gonna grab his body and his elbows and his hands. I'm gonna move all of them up a little bit more. So his body will move a little bit faster in this part. For overlapping purposes, I'm gonna, his waist is going to have like straightened up quite a bit, but I'm actually gonna counter rotate his neck really low. So it's like in this jump, his head's getting left behind a little bit. And in the same way, I think I want the hands to be left behind a decent amount. So those will be actually, and if he's doing a backflip, they're probably gonna go way forward. I don't know a lot about backflips, but let's assume they go way forward. So we can pull his elbows down, keep that very clean. This one's stretched to the max, so let's get a little bit of bend in there. So now he's here, and then now I'm looking at it. This is his fully compressed state, but now I'm thinking that maybe in his fully compressed state, we want his wrists to go way back and his elbows should have to be up to here. So he's stretching his arms way back. Sorry, I'm not really paying attention to the chat, but this stuff just takes some time. And then we have to get him balanced a little bit. These are going to be real picky. Yeah, there you go. So it's kind of compressed. Oh, arms up when sitting? Oh, I guess that makes sense. Oh, that sucks. Because yeah, they go down. I guess that's only wrong in one frame. So yeah, okay, that's trivial to fix. So I go pull, yeah, arms up. So I'm glad I just glanced at the chat. Thanks for whoever just said that. So the arms will be up because you want those whipping down to pull your weight forward. And then, yeah, when he's in this compressed state, actually, a lot of this is going to be, like his head could even be forward. And I like the head being forward or more upward because now when he goes to the next frame, his head will compress. Now his weight moved back. So I'm going to grab the hands and the wrist. We'll scoot all this forward. And yeah, those are whipping down. And then this will happen here. So he's in the stretched state. So actually the hands, he's jumping. So the hands would have gone down to gain as much energy as possible. Good tip. So these are fully down, in which case the elbows are fully back. So let's see. So he's down, arms go down, and then they'd suddenly go and, I guess, whip back up, go whip and catch up to themselves here. So let's see. Casual, compress. Well, even here, I kind of wish I'd kept the previous frame because now now you start. This is where you start actually building in the character in the character because if we take, I guess I'll take an in between that. I might even just copy it over though. Actually, there's a couple neat tricks here I can show as well. So what I kind of want is this frame, but he's going to start out like bent down with his elbows down, and then he's going to reach up and then do the jump. So I want this frame to be more, here, I'll show you. I want this frame to be a lot more like one than the other. So what I'm actually going to do is give myself a little bit more time here, and now I can scoot along this timeline and pick where I like. So I can actually go like right there, and then just record everything, scoot that over, and then select that. And now I've actually kind of taken a lot more of the motion from one side than the other. So this frame is going to be a little bit more relaxed. So this one, elbows down and back, wrists a little bit more at rest. And then maybe the back a little straighter, head a little straighter, wrist a little bit more at rest. So unfortunately, like I said, the feet, so he's going to go down and then raise his arms up and then go to jump. Now the head might look a little bit weird there. I'm not sure yet. Hup, like I like that movement there. And it's really straight, but I feel like everything needs to have moved forward maybe a little bit. I'm not sure. So I'm going to grab the waist and pull the whole thing forward. And I don't know how the body would look, but I'm going to bend them backwards. So it's a little more springy. So it's like indicating the curve he's going for. And then it's going to, and even that reversals are really nice. I don't know if it's a good idea to do this, but you see how his body is bent one direction, and then it's going to move into the opposite direction, and then it's going to move into the opposite direction again. And those kind of reversals are very visually appealing if you can get the transitions right. So now it flips around. So now now I'm paying attention to his overall body mass. Really easy to move this, but it's like that all looks pretty good actually. He's moving. The hips go up, and then here, even that looked okay, and then that looks okay. That's fine. But then this one, it suddenly moves forward a bunch, and I think it should be back further. So here, I'm just going to grab all those controls and just move them back. So let's see. Rotate, rotate, rotate. And then, okay, this one, I also want to be back. Boom. Yeah, look at that. That feels so much better. So you get that spin. And these might not be perfect yet, but they're better. So up, 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 around, round, 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 boom, compress. So that's pretty good. And do you see how, like, this is what I really, really love about this technique is, oh, yeah, people are, that's no fun. People are putting reference for backflips. All right, we'll go ahead and take a look. Super slow-mo. This is Fight or Flight Academy. So arms go way, well, yeah, he's going for the full one. So the arms go way back. We should look at reference. I was just thinking how far we go without. So the arms go way yeah, so okay, the back is a lot flatter, and then he goes and hugs himself. Hugging the knees. Yeah, we just kind of have him hugging his, I mean, not that, there's probably variations, but yeah, thanks for the link. I mean, I wanted to just see how far we could get without looking at reference, but wait, somebody was saying that the arm should be back. But now he's going, his arms are super far back. So like we wouldn't, okay, well, somebody's advice was kind of the opposite. I guess it kind of depends, but let's see. Yeah, let's go back. But yeah, that makes more sense. Yeah, we can fix that pretty easily. So here, the arms should not be up. They should be way back, unless there's more compression. This one should be way back as well. But yeah, I mean, I'm not expecting to get this to like final animation. Yep. Arms back, elbows up. So, I mean, honestly, that guy seemed to go back even further. And if somebody can do it in real life, you should definitely push it further in animation. So, down, arms way back, and then whipping up. And then here, probably way up again. And then, yeah, like I said, I don't know that's accurate that the head wouldn't go, but I'm just trying to get a little bit of animation there. So now this transition between these two, there's no arc in here. He's going straight from one position to the other. So we definitely need a keyframe in between those two. So make sure that I have that all keyframed. But anyway, before I saw the people chatting, what I was going to say is I hope you can see the advantage of just leaving my keyframes all bunched up the way they are like this, because what it's enabling us to do is not worry about time at all. Now, like I said, these arms are just transitioning from one state to the other, so you have to give it that in between. Very important. So his arms are swinging way down. He's probably doing a wide arc with them as well. My assumption here being that that's going to gain as much momentum as possible. So Honestly, even if we were exaggerating these, maybe even make them practically touch the ground, like way down. Because, before this was going straight from there to there, but now we're saying no, go down and then up. Now they are just going to still do that smooth transition, so we have to keep on doing more and more in between frames to figure that out. But like I was saying, hopefully you can see now the advantage to just stacking up all your keyframes and worrying about the timing later, because we can just keep on sticking in between frames and framing through and seeing if the motion looks good. So boom, like we kind of lose our relaxed frame here, but he's back, swinging forward. I'm gonna look at the reference briefly. So yeah, his head's super forward, and then he whips. No, he keeps it forward the whole time. That's kind of boring for animation. I feel like that is visually boring. Like he's keeping his head forward, but I like the idea of like as the body moves up, it's like, oh, the body's moving up so fast that the head gets left behind, and then it's gonna whip back. He's grabbing his knees. We're not, but that's fine. So let's just see. So, I mean, I don't see how much further we can go. I mean, we're already going way over, but let's see if there's any super keyframes. And it will just time it out a little bit. So let's see. We put the arms up, and then I'm just going to see what he does with his arms. He whips them up, and he does. Well, they go back forward again, but they don't have this pose. So I guess what we'll do here is make a very kind of iconic, or we'll make another key pose here, which is going to still be a strong shape, which is going to be like this big long arc like this. Yeah, look at that pose. Like that's a very strong pose. Like you get the whole arc. I mean, and if you want to make it real strong, we'll just continue that. We'll just bend these a little bit so you continue this arc. If we really want to continue it through all, we'll just get this big curve going through the entire thing. Now, we're just making it so the feet are still planted in this moment. I'd probably have them on tippy toes. And if we're continuing the arc, we could take both these feet and just move them up that little bit so we get the bend in the knees. And then you can see we get this nice arc through the entire character. Now, you got to keep in mind when you're animating that you'd want to be animating from the POV you're going to see in the end. I think a backflip is always going to look best kind of from a 3/4 or from the side. But when you start worrying about how the frames overlap, you want to do it from a particular pose because you want the limbs not to overlap each other too much and really rock, really rock like a silhouette. Now, let's see. Something looks a little bit weird here. Boom, boom, boom. Yeah, I think right here, these hands need to be in a more forward pose. Pretty straight though. Hup, hup, hup. Whee! Let's straighten this head out a little bit more here, and then you can compress it in, and then maybe even a little bit extra there. I feel like the actual guy flipping is even more compressed than we have the character here. We're leaving the hand behind, like right here. So we got this big movement going on here, which is pretty good. But you see the hands are actually flipping up into the air, but they used to be here. So the energy to get them around there would be a lot. So I'm thinking we'll grab both of those, and maybe he's a little bit more compressed here. And then, yeah, okay, so that's fine. So, and then, you want to introduce your cartooniness wherever you can. So, like the arms are coming in. It's going to be a better arc if both of those are down a little bit. And then I'd probably introduce another frame right here. Yeah, definitely one right there. So we'll scoot those over. Midpoint, record all. And now here, he's going from that position and he's going to recompress. So we kind of want to counter a lot of that to really kind of emphasize where the pose is going to go, or once again, do an inversion. So I'm going to tilt him forward a little bit, grab this waist, tilt it, carefully grab the red, tilt him back, and then we will leave the hands behind quite a bit. So we're going to move these up and then the elbows forward. And so the thought here is on the previous keyframe, his hands were here and they're getting left behind. So I'm going to move those back in about that position. I want the elbows not to flare out, so I'll move those forward. Hup, hup. And then, yeah, and then they'll come press down. I kind of, now that I think about it, I think maybe I'd like them to be up a little bit more in both. But yeah, we got to start wrapping this up because, you know, you could spend 2 days polishing this animation. But yeah, and you do so many in betweens, like where you'd want to do follow throughs on things. Like we're not building in the follow throughs here because see he compresses here and then boom he's going to stand. But you'd want him to be in this compressed frame for a few, and then or even build exaggerated poses. I guess we can do that in the in betweens. We'll do that. Well, I guess we'll pretty much do that now. Let's see what we're dealing with. Hide everything. I haven't saved this since we started animating. Let's turn off auto keyframing and animated one. And let's just check out what we got. Pose, compress. It's like even that we don't compress, we just go straight down into that. But so there's no anticipation. I love that arc. Like, it's gorgeous. And then flipping around. There's definitely a little bit of floatiness there, but let's just see. So, so now, like I said, we can't spend all day on this. So I do have other things I got to do. So let's start putting some timing in here. So, you know, we hit play. It's going to be insane. I can't even really see what's going on. So now we just start introducing time, which is super straightforward. In fact, we can just grab all of these frames and drag it out and just put a couple of frames in between everything. I'm going to try and get it so that they're all even. It's a little bit difficult. They all snap, I think, right there. There's going to be a few frames in between all of them. Now, it still might be insanely fast, and it's not going to be timed out correctly at all because we arbitrarily put in-betweens. But yeah, just by dragging that out now, you can see the motion that we are aiming for, and it's not horrible. So now we start timing it out a little bit, and everything should be playing back in real time. So let's just see. So now, let's see. We're going to be, scoot all that back. It's going to go and compress, and I think it would be a good idea to hold this compression a little bit. So I'm actually going to record an entire keyframe right there, and we'll drag everything forward. So we get a couple frames of like hold and then whip it up. Now all of this should probably happen very quickly. So those are going to move up into there. So it's kind of like everything in this time should happen quite quickly. So we will steal a keyframe from each of those like that. So now that's going to happen really quick. And now that should probably be relatively quick as well. Whoop. And then that can have a little more time. And then boom. I think that should be quicker. I don't know. Oops. Undo. One back. Boom. Like I really feel that hit. Boom. And then this should compress quite quickly. So yeah, it's kind of the same idea. These will all go back. Those will go back quite quickly. Compress. And then we'll hold that compression. I'm even just going to completely hold it, record there. So everything is stuck in that position. And then transition back. Now, obviously, we'd want an in-between frame right there. And there's a lot of in-betweens I think I'd see all over the place. But let's just see what that quick retiming did. Not horrible. I think a lot of stuff in the air needs to go a little bit quicker. I thought that we could, maybe that can use an extra frame, but tiny little smidgens of frames here can mean a lot. And it depends on how much we're in betweening here. That goes forward, yeah, and then it slows down a lot, so that has to go quicker. And then that's kind of an unfurling, so maybe a little slower, that's fine for the contrast. Whoop. That's a little better. Wee. Wee. Whoop. Whoop. Let's see. It goes back, hold, starts moving forward. Doot, 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 doot. Kind of want that to go quicker. It's like that's an in-between that we needed to get the arms moving. So maybe, I mean, it's kind of crazy, but like putting no time in between these. It's literally from one frame to the next. Whoop. But yeah, it feels better. So now some of the arcs, let's see. I'm following his weight, like right around here. Like what we should really, we got to track the, right here. I feel like everything needs to move a little bit that way. Oop, I gotta remember auto keyframe's not on. Everything should be back a little bit. Yeah, that's better. And then he starts like just moving forward. So maybe we gotta be careful. Maybe everything's moving back too much. Yeah, maybe all this should be more forward. Oh, that's okay. That should be more forward. I'm just trying to center his weight a little bit. That's better there. And now here, there's a lot of a turn right there. Let's see. Yeah, all of this should be more like that. And maybe he needs to land further back. I'm not sure. But his weight in the spin feels better now. And he suddenly kind of magically moves forward. So I think, yeah, everything needs to move back. Like everything from here needs to be scooted back. So yeah, he's magically moving there. And you see, I'm only making changes to, there we go. That looks better there. I'm only making changes on a keyframe. Now I gotta be careful here. This little bit could be a little bit of a pain because he's placed his feet. So now I need to figure out where the placement should be. So it's like from there. Boom. Okay, that's not bad. He probably even moved back a little bit still. But you see he's going to suddenly jump from one frame to the next. And I don't have any good way of knowing where he is. So I'm actually just going to make a plane. I mean, you could go and modify the keyframes, but right now we're just kind of loosely moving everything. So right there, that's where his feet are touching the back. His heels touch the back of that. So I'll move here. And his heels should touch the back of that. And move here. Heels should touch the back of that. Yeah, there's just a quick little fix on that. So yeah, not bad. Now right here, I would definitely do some follow. So he's compressed. So I'd want to do some follow through. So on his wrist, yeah, these would go back. And his elbows, make sure that they're up. And honestly, they probably even go out. 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 So now you can hopefully see like he's going to land and then that energy can continue through. And then I'm even feeling like I want another in-between here. They can stay down in his compressed state. So it can relax a little bit, but maybe not that much. I'm going to scoot everything back, and now I'm going to just steal one frame over and then move it over two. Record. And now he's going to uncompress a little bit, and let's continue his arm movement. So essentially, I think I want his wrists to straighten. So their arms aren't really going to go back too much, but his arms will straighten out a little bit. So I'll kind of follow that motion through, and then he can start standing up. And then even that, like, it's like, okay, he's in this final standing state. I'd grab everything and go forward a few frames, record everything again, even though he shouldn't be in this exact pose. But we get a little bit of overlap in that motion. So he's moving into this final position. And we can even, right here, we start getting to the point where that's going there. I wanted to do an in-between. So it's like he goes up and I'm going to have his arms overshoot that movement. So those will go up a little bit extra. His elbows may just back a little bit. His head will go back just a little bit to do the overlap. And even here, as he's standing, I'm going to bias his head to be more forward, so it's kind of lagging behind the motion, and then it'll overshoot, and you see his arms will overlap there and kind of move up. Maybe it's a little extreme, and they should go forward a bit. Not that much, and forward. Oh. Well, it just kind of feels like he hits a wall. Probably means we need a few more frames in there. Make sure I key frame everything on that pose. And then his elbows. Yeah, it's a little clunky right there. Let's take a look. Whoop, bing. But well, I mean, and there's a lot of overlap. I mean, this is like a fine little first pass, but a lot of it goes to starting to build very nice, clean in-betweens and get the poses like really nice as you go. Because, you know, a lot of these, like, you'd want to like fix the silhouettes a little bit. Like, you get this really nice compression and everything here, but it goes to like, okay, let's find a keyframe. And then just for visual appeal, if this was the POV of the character, I would do things like grab this foot and then move one of them a little bit more forward than the other one and move this one a little bit back. You see, like, that's going to read better, and even better if there's like a little bit of space in between them. Like, so that type of thing, and you'd want to kind of carry that through. Like, this front leg on this one, we should have that one be a little bit more compressed than the other one, and this one can continue being a little bit more out. And it's just like, instead of his limbs disappearing into each other, you can see them a little bit more clearly. But any change you make to one frame, you have to make sure it follows through on everything else. So once again, this one can be out that little bit. And like I said, there's so many rules of animation where you'd want to be like just doing, like, that's working on silhouette, and then a lot of like right here, like you see he's going for the fall. So what you want to do is go from the most compressed state possible to the most elongated state to back to the most compressed state. So that's a fine compression right there. Boom. Even though I feel like maybe it should be quicker. Boom. But like right here is another, there's a keyframe here. So I'm thinking like right here, we exaggerate it by keeping the feet more compressed. So it's like, okay, right now he's going to be very compressed because he's suddenly going to elongate a lot. And then, you know, we probably want to exaggerate this as well. So this waist is too low. So we'd scoot that back for maximum stretch. And then where did the head used to be? It's very far forward. And I guess there's not too much motion there, so I'll take it. But yeah, that extra compression there is really going to like sell this pop. Like, get the stretch compressed. The arms do the, you know, here's overlapping and overlapping animation. So the arms are a continuation of that motion. Now the body just kind of stops dead here. You see right there, there's not much motion. So I'd want to follow through on that as well. So it's probably mostly the waist bending a little bit more. It's not going to take much. See, it's just going to be a little bit more motion there, so it doesn't quite stop. And then I guess right here when he's going, I'd probably want to do a little bit of a reversal on the waist. The arms go way back, and then they're settling so quickly there. I'm guessing what I want is more like them bent more forward, and it's going to help that kind of inverted back. So it goes forward. And then, you know, if you're doing one final pose, you make them look a little bit more relaxed. So let's, before I forget, because I will, let's keyframe everything. Let's move the hip down just a little bit. Once again, we could introduce a little bit of a twist into it. Counter twist, turn his body a little bit, and then arms at rest. Elbows. Back a little. Maybe turn and look at the camera. Like, check that out. All right, I think we gotta, let's just see what we got here, and probably maybe a tweak or two, but then call it. Hoop, yeah. The little turn at the end is way too extreme. The like he's not in doing this extreme action, so these final couple frames should probably get a little more relaxed. Ooh. It's fine. And then even here, like I just don't like it stopping dead. So I'd rewind the frame forward a bunch of frames, and then keyframe that. So now he's going to have that little bit of like still alive motion moving. Yeah, that helped a lot. It's not perfect, but it's a very kind of dramatic, like, huh? Like, how about that? How do you like them apples? Let's put a few extra frames there, pull that back, and then even that could probably use an extra one. It's a lot more relaxed. Even that turn, return, turn is too much. I'm going to do that one instead. Yeah, there we go, more subtle. Not bad. Whee! Yeah, just straight up keyframing. It's I don't know. Like I said, I did 2 years of Animation Mentor, and I don't get to play with it too often. We could follow through on this a lot more, but hopefully you can see, like, if you break the process down into a very logical series of steps, building the timing and the motion is so much harder. Ignore that. Just completely ignore it and go straight into key poses. Like, I want it to go from here, and then eventually it's going to get here, and eventually it's going to get here. I mean, yeah, it's not bad. I've done worse. The elbows get left behind there in a weird way. It's like they're compressed really nicely there. They're bent up by the shoulder, and then suddenly they start straightening themselves out. I guess the purpose. Oh yeah. Oh okay. So yeah, there's a frame I'd like. Grab the wrists, and let's see. Right. So that's fine there, and then here. Oh wait, that's weird. See, I suddenly let them start falling behind, and then they suddenly start whipping forward. But I feel like those would be more like that, maybe. But then they're going to suddenly whip forward in the next frame. So maybe not quite as extreme. Oop. Not the knees, the elbows. Yeah, that's all right. Whee! Ta-da! And what's great, these are all keyframes. So I think we could totally put this into a cloner. Wait, can everybody do a backflip off of each other's shoulders? I don't think that makes sense, but yeah, they'll be floating when they compress. But just for fun, you put this into a honeycomb, lay the honeycomb flat on the ground, and put a little space between them. And I think even you can go to multi-instance, and yeah, I mean, you can do multi-instance and you get an entire army. I don't know if you can offset the time with a multi-instance, but you can make that many. I don't think you can offset the time with a multi-instance, but now I just want to know. Random time offset 15. No, you can't with a multi-instance. You can do lots of other things with it, like time won't work, but we could scale, and they're all scaled from 0, so we can do a uniform absolute scale, and some can be bigger, some can be smaller. Grab the random position, don't do Y. Grab rotation, give them all some rotation. You could even do different colors. Then you have a big crowd of people, different scale, different sizes, and they all whoop. And with multi-instance, I mean, here's what gets crazy is, I guess I should save that, and then we'll put it back in. We got that. So that's 10 by 10. Let's do 22 by 22 and hit play. Still running in real time. Let's do 33 by 33. Still running in real time. 44 by 44 is probably going to finally start. Nope, still real time. 55. All right, now we're finally not quite at real time. And look at how many clones we have with a multi-instance. It's pretty crazy. I do like it. An entire backflipping army. But there's a lot of really neat tools and things you can think about. Like I said, you want to pay attention to your arcs. And a lot of these limbs aren't really going to be showing arcs too much, but you can just kind of do that in isolation as well. If I show this arm, look at this. You can see the motion of it. You can actually see where the arc is breaking. So it goes to like, oh, right there, there's definitely kind of a break in the arc, but it's changing shape. So, I mean, and it's even cool here because I can grab these. I mean, it's dangerous to make changes not on the frame it's on, but we can find that frame. It's like, oh, right there, that's a better arc. So yeah, that's completely fine. I can grab that and scoot this, scoot that timing around and find better arcs. And see the hands just kind of stopping there. So that's actually not bad. Yeah, it's doing the flip. So that's kind of acceptable, but you see where even like I wasn't, necessarily super intending it in various places, but you see even right here when his arm swings around, look at arcs and then arcs and then arcs. And as smooth as all those can be, the smoother that bit of animation is going to look. And on anything that's kind of directly keyframed, you should be able to just select, I'm just going to view it, and you can see the arcs here. So it's like, oh, maybe this foot would look a little bit better, just curved there. Like I said, dangerous to make changes now at that time, but if you're kind of counting on these being very clean arcs, it's pretty easy to grab any one of those. And yeah, like right there, this foot looks not, or that arc is not great on that foot. Now we are just doing some extra compression there, but if we're following the arc through, pull that out. I'm not auto keyframing anymore, but if we pull this here, look, that arc does follow through. And even here, like it's like that's where I stopped doing the different silhouette of the foot, so you can actually see it represented in the arc. So yeah, keeping that kind of stuff in mind. There's a lot of different ways of viewing it and playing. So yeah, really fun. Let's see. I haven't checked the chat in a while. Sorry, I was getting into it. Chris Crocker is saying you could do the overshoot and the F curves. Yes, you could. To me, going to the F curves is the final step. Because right now we're dealing purely with keyframes. If we kept on going further, like right now, there's a lot of in-betweens we're not doing, and there's a lot of overshoots where it's like, okay, I like our basic arcs, but now the hands need to be offset by a single frame forward, and the head should have extra overlap that this doesn't. And we'd stop having perfect, everything wouldn't be on these perfect keyframes. At a certain step, that's when you have to break it apart. But I wait as long as possible to get to that step. And then even after I do that, then I like to go into the F curves and start moving those curves around. But just the fact that we could completely ignore them and just worry about the way it visually looks here. But in the same way, we're just looking at the arcs of like where the wrist is and where the hand was and the foot. You can go into your F curves and see how your arcs are moving and the acceleration of them. And if things aren't smoothly transitioning between them, and typically you want them smoothly transitioning unless you have some sort of explosive action where it's like, right when the feet suddenly shoot down to catch the ground. Yes, that's intentional contrast right there. But and then a lot of the work we did there on the front end is really important because in the way that we just made sure we only recorded on the position and rotation on the objects that we need, when we go into our F curves, we're not going to have insanity. Yes, there's going to be a lot. In fact, why don't we just jump into the F curve? And if we have everything selected, like there's a lot going on, but it's not that crazy. You can see we got some pretty good arcs around. Like you see, those look pretty good, but you can visually see potentially some problems. Like right here, I'm not even sure what object that is, but like you'd think that this should arc up a little bit more and that should curve in a little bit more. I'm not sure what it is, but this could give you a little bit of feedback on where those should be. It's not always the case. Sometimes that shape should exist. Like I think the way the arm twists around when the whole body's flipping, like those will look weirder than usual. Checking more chats. Checking YouTube. Oh yeah, totally, Chris. Yes, the final steps. And deleting some would also help. Like if you got a nice clean arc, you could get rid of them. You want them visually on the arc, or you can delete them and have them not on the arc. A lot of cleanup. And let's see, we're supposed to stop at 4 and we're aiming at 6 now. So this is pretty much a full 4-hour stream, which I think is pretty much a tie with the longest. Let's see, movements of backflip. You guys were chatting a whole bunch. I'm trying to catch up. Reference. Yeah, arms and back. Science. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, this was really fun. And AB, I don't know if you're still in the chat, but I hope that covered and more what you were asking about. Let's see. Yeah, thanks everybody. Well, I mean, essentially, we just rigged a character completely from scratch and did a backflip animation. Not perfect, but it does work. Chris Cadaver, sorry, we are not tackling any more questions at this point. We've been talking for 4 hours straight, and I am pooped. As simple as moving the keyframe, or is there a trick? Yeah, sorry, level bevel. I'm not sure what that's in context of. Moving these. Now, these are actually placements. What you're visually seeing here is I'm not sure if you're talking about these, but these are visual placements in space. So I can actually grab these, and I'm actually moving where they are positioned just by dragging the visual keyframe. So that's pretty cool. You can't really do that on the in-betweens. But yeah, you can see these arcs. And even here, like this arc should bulge out more, and that would have to be in the F curves, or possibly like this would move out and you get a better arc there. Let's see. Pro Tools, yes, NAB is canceled, but Maxon is going to still do their live stream. So C4D Live is still happening. It's all just happening remotely. So let's see. Yeah, so the presentation will still be there. So next week, 2 o'clock Central, 8 p.m. GMT, I will be presenting from C4D Live at the exact same time as I always present, but will be from C4D Live. So everybody should come and hang out. I told them if I did that time, I could bring a bigger crowd. So everybody's got to come and represent. But yeah, that was really fun. Gotta do the quick pitches. The wrapping up here. First of all, if you like the stuff, we can go. You should join the Rocket Lasso Slack channel. You can join for free. Head to rocketlassoslack.com, and everybody's in there to answer and ask questions and post links and show cool things and do challenges. So it's really fun. You should come and hang out. And in addition to that, if you like this kind of content, if you like this, if you want to get access to scene files, and there's even a bonus stream tomorrow, we'll keep on exploring some other things. Then I have a Patreon set up. I appreciate the support. It's really cool. Currently, it's the only Rocket Lasso-based income stream until we actually get plugins out there. So any help on that is appreciated. But I'm going to keep doing these streams for free live for everybody because it's really fun. And I learn a bunch, and it's good practice. And getting the knowledge out there and getting everybody better is just good for the world. So thank you so much, everybody. I will see you next week for the C4D live stream. Okay. Bye-bye, everybody. See you then.